The meeting. We'll start the meeting with opening ceremonies and the Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody will stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If everybody could take just a moment to think about all our servicemen throughout the world that are out there protecting us. Thank you very much. We'll have a roll call as I call your name off. Say here if you are here. Mr. Persinger.
I am here.
Mr. Jasinski.
Here.
Mr. Stevens.
Here.
Mr. Bauer.
Here.
And myself, Mr. Cook, all present. Also present are our town attorney, Mr. Townsend, our town manager, Mr. Zolper, our town finance clerk, Ms. Gossett, and I believe Merle is on the line for code enforcement.
Sir, so is Chief Macker and Lieutenant Hocker in my office, sir.
Lieutenant Hocker and Chief Macker are in the town manager's office. You'll see my name listed as Jim Dedes. That's because I'm using his computer. It's actually Dale Cook here. So if I have a motion to adopt the agenda.
Motion.
Second.
Motion is moved by Mr. Stevens and second by Mr. Bauer. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstain? Unanimously. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes, and I'm going to be very honest with everybody. I was running around all day and I had intended to read the minutes today, so I'm going to abstain from the vote on the minutes. But do we have a motion to accept the minutes for February 5th Town Public Commissioner Public Hearing meeting?
Yeah, I will motion to accept the minutes, but I have one change, and that is in the February 12th minutes.
Well, we're talking about the February 5th first.
Oh, we're doing them one at a time, not all three?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. I'll motion to approve the February 5th minutes then.
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Stevens, motion by Mr. Jasinski. Any further discussion on the February 5th minutes? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? One abstention. So that passes. February 12th, 2021 monthly town commissioners meeting minutes.
I will motion to approve those with one change, which is in item number 2, the sentence that says to restate 2.5 instead of 3 in the 2 areas of section 2. That should actually read in the 2 areas of section 1.
That should actually read what?
In the 2 areas of section 1.
Ashley, you have that?
I will second that motion.
Second the motion with the change of the minutes. Proposed by Mr. Jasinski, seconded by Mr. Persinger. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any against? And Ashley, one abstention. February 26, 2021 Town Commissioners Workshop minutes.
I move that we accept the workshop minutes.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Persinger, second by Commissioner Jasinski. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor say aye.
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 Any against? And one abstention. Ashley, you have one abstention. Committee reports. Do we have, Mr. Bauer, did we have it listed later on on the agenda for the marketing committee? Did you want to say anything now for the marketing committee, or you want to wait till then?
No, we'll wait for that. I mean, the
Okay.
marketing committee's been working hard on a bunch of stuff, and that's their hard work that needs to be recognized.
Very good. I agree with you. Okay, we move on. Announcements and updates. Oh, excuse me, public comments. Ashley, is there anybody on the public comment line?
I just had one person join. It looks like it says Drew. I'm not sure if that's Drew Martin from the marketing committee. If you want, I can bring him in and we can see just to make sure.
I'm sorry, if you wanted what?
I believe if you want me to bring him in just to make sure it's Drew
Just to
Martin.
make sure, yeah. Mr. Martin, we're just double checking. You were here for your committee report, right? Oh, he's not connected yet.
Well, confirming it is Drew Martin.
Yeah. Mr. Martin, we just brought you in simply to connect with you to confirm that it was you listed. And we're going to hold off your report. That committee report comes with item number, let me look here. Anyway, it comes later in the meeting, Mr. Martin, so we'll call you up then if that's all right.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Any announcements and updates? One, I want to announce to everybody the weather is actually pretty fair in Dewey Beach, and I hope you come for the weekend and wear your mask. So, other than that, does anybody else have any announcements or updates they want to make? Hearing none, I'll move on. Action item number 1, discuss and possibly vote to approve an ordinance to amend Chapter 1, General Provisions, Section 1 through 16 definition of the Code of the Town of Dewey Beach to adopt the definition of persons. Mr. Townsend, I believe you requested this because we had various definitions that you wanted to straighten out. If you will explain this for us.
That's right, Mr. Mayor, thank you. This initiative is what I would describe as a housekeeping initiative. It turned out that in one of the, I guess in the context of the lodging ordinance we were working on, I discovered that there were multiple definitions of the word persons in Section 1 or Section 16 of Chapter 1. And some of you may recall that there was a all-encompassing effort at one point to take all the definitions from the multiple chapters and move them into a single chapter, which had this one consequence to it that I don't think we'd envisioned. I had one concern about doing this, and that was that we not inadvertently have any impact on voter eligibility. And I've checked that, and that's established in our charter, not by our definition of persons. I don't know of any other possible adverse consequences. So my recommendation is that we just adopt a very broad definition of the word persons, which is the case in this proposed ordinance, and delete the other references, which again are really more technical than substantive.
So what we would need I believe, Mr. Townsend, is that a motion, in order to discuss this, we have to have a motion to accept and a second and then discussion. Is that correct?
That's an appropriate way to proceed. Yes.
Mr. Stevens, you had your hand up?
Only to make a motion.
Motion to accept the ordinance.
Motion to accept the ordinance. Correct.
I'll second it.
Second from Mr. Bauer, is that one? Okay.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion on this item? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of accepting the ordinance as written by our town attorney, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Unanimous. Mr. Townsend, do we need to read the ordinance out, or is it acceptable that was just printed?
No, it was made part of our postings for the meeting, and it can be printed out and signed by yourself and by the town manager when you're ready.
Thank you very much. If there's no more discussion, we'll move on to the next item. Discuss and possibly vote to approve the renewal of a membership of terms for a term of 3 years for Rick Dreyer and Phil Davenport to the Board of Adjustments. do you have a motion, Mr. Persinger?
Yeah, I move that we accept these two renewals.
There's a motion on the floor to accept. Is there a
Second.
second? Second by
Second.
Mr. Stevens. Motion by Mr. Persinger, second by Mr. Stevens to accept the renewal of terms for 3 years for Rick Dryer and Phil Davenport to the Board of Adjustment. Is there any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? Actually, that was unanimous. Unfortunately, I'll have to ask for a motion to table item number 3 because there's a couple items here. Number 1, I didn't put the name in. Number 2, if you remember, Rehoboth just had an issue over this very same problem of not putting the proposed member's name in the ordinance, and the Attorney General ruled in the person who complained favor, and the town had to go back and redo it. So we can't discuss number 3. I'll accept a motion to table.
So moved.
Motion to table.
Motion to table by Mr. Jazinski, second by Mr. Stevens.
That is correct.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any against? Any abstention? Unanimous. Move on to item number 4, discuss and possibly vote to approve the renewal membership of Mike Harmer and Jimmy O'Connor for the term of 3 years, and the renewal of membership of term of Mark Nordquist for a term of 2 years to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Mr.
Motion.
Bauer?
Like the motion to approve those.
Motion for Mike Harmer and Jimmy O'Connor for a term of 3 years, and Mr. Nordquist for a term of 2 years. Is there a
I'll
second?
I'll
Second
second
by
that.
Mr. Persinger. Mr. Bauer made the motion, Mr. Persinger second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any against, say nay. Any abstentions? Unanimous, Ashley. Item number 5, discuss and possibly vote to add Tiffany Patterson as a new member to the Marketing Committee. Is there a motion on the floor?
Motion to add Tiffany.
Mr. Bauer motion, Mr. Stevens seconded
Second.
to put Tiffany Patterson as new member of Marketing Committee. You had her short bio that was sent out. So is there any further discussion? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any against, say nay. Any abstentions? Ashley, that was unanimous. Item number 6, discuss and possibly vote to approve a recommendation from the Town of Dewey Beach Marketing Committee for possible fundraisers to offset beautification expenses in the proposed fiscal year 2022 budget. And this will be handled by Commissioner Bauer and Chairman Martin. Commissioner Bauer.
We need a motion to discuss.
Well, okay, yes, that's good. Thank you. Is there a motion to discuss?
Second.
Proposed by Mr. Stevens, second by Mr. Bauer. Mr. Bauer, please go ahead.
Yeah, Gary, did you raise your hand on that?
Well, I was just going to make the motion so we could discuss.
Okay, we were just going quick. So we have Drew Martin with us. The marketing committee's been working really hard on a bunch of ideas to help offset some of the expenses we have through a beautification project. So I'd like to bring Drew Martin into the conversation here. He's got a brief presentation for us all, and I'll take it from there. Ashley, do you have a copy of it? Can you pop it up?
I do not have it on this computer.
Okay.
Let me see if I can
Well-
bring it over.
We'll have to leave it. Drew,
I think Drew,
we can share the screen for you.
yeah, Drew had it where he was going to be bringing it up.
Okay.
Looks like he's,
I will wait for Mr. Martin to come online.
I am here.
Hey, Drew.
I am here.
We
Sorry,
don't
it's
have
away
your
from-
picture, dear. We have your audio, but not video.
Yeah, let me get that set.
There we go.
There you
All
go.
right. So you guys up to us already then, huh?
Yeah, that was a quick
Flying.
move.
You're moving fast. I don't have my my assistant to help me here, Alex. So I don't want to hold you guys up. So I will just go ahead and move through this, what we've been talking about. So what the commissioners made a request to us, again, Drew Martin, head of the marketing committee. Commissioners suggested that maybe the marketing committee could come up with some ideas on fundraising, and we've kind of directed that towards beautification projects in town. And when I say fundraising, fundraising for the town of Dewey. So what we would like to propose is some projects in the town, and our goal would be to raise money for these projects. So right now, some of the things that we're talking about are, for instance, flowers, planters on the Bay Walk. We're also talking about offering residents a chance to purchase signs that would go in the median, which is probably good timing because we all know that they're getting ready to redo the median. So if you've noticed some of the signs you've seen further up on Route 1, I think you'll see ones. This area is maintained by Shell Brothers or other different companies, and they look nice. They're nice, well done signs. And that's one of the things that we're talking about, maybe offering to individuals if they would, or a company, either one, if they would like to maybe purchase a sign, and then that would go towards, again, helping the town with the with having to maintain the median or maintain other green areas.
Jump in for a second, Drew.
Sure.
Our town manager, Bill, spoke to DelDOT, so we wouldn't have any issues. They gave us what their guidelines would be. It goes right in line with, we see it all over the country here, but adopt a highway, this section of road is adopted by whomever. So it's along those lines. So they have some specific guidelines that would have to follow on that.
Okay. Great. Well, we're really hoping that might be one of the ones, because we kind of feel like that is I don't want to say an easy sell, but people always like to have their name on a sign. And I think that would be a nice thing for everybody. The other projects that we're talking about, so what we want to try to start in, our goal was at the end of March was we were going to be involved in the mailing that the town is going to do. And we're going to have a marketing piece where we can promote what we're trying to do. And again, in very general terms of this fundraising. So we're hoping that we can get that done to be in this mailing. Ashley, I'm not sure, when was that mailing supposed to go again?
Going to go out in April.
Okay. All right. So hopefully we'll have everything in place by the end of March to be able to have the mailing ready. And again, it will just be a piece. I can't bring my screen up because we had Alex. But anyway, we're going to have a logo, and then it'll just kind of go again into very general terms of what we're trying to accomplish. And then hopefully, the way things are going with COVID, they're going to have the art show hopefully this spring. And we would also, one of the things that we were talking about doing would be a flower mart, which was separate from the art show. And the flower mart would potentially we can find a spot at the Lions Club or maybe some other spot wherever. And then we'll also, at that flower mart where we're selling flowers, we'll also be promoting this whole campaign. We'll have some literature they're going to be able to hand out. And we're also going to have a presence, definitely, if they do the Easter egg scoop on the beach. I'm hoping that happens this year. Fingers crossed, sounds like we're heading in that direction. So if that's the case, we're definitely going to have more of our information at those events. so people will understand exactly what we're trying to raise the money for. Because we're trying to make it as detailed as possible so someone who lives in town can say, oh, okay, I understand. I'd like to donate money to the town and I can see where my money's going. I can see beautiful flowers in the median, or I could see nice pots on the Baywalk. It makes it much nicer when somebody can understand exactly where their donation would be going. So, and then we're talking about maybe doing some other events as the summer goes, maybe a pirate day, or raffling off tickets to be VIP of Dewey Beach. That day you run the whole town. No offense to Dale. Somebody's taking over Dale's job for that day. And,
Dale's gonna want to win the prize that and Bill, that they don't have to do it.
Yeah, I'm sure he would.
I wish you guys could have joined me on my trip with the town manager this morning down through the coastal Delaware. It was very interesting. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. No problem. And then maybe in the fall next year, or no, I'm sorry, in the next February 2022, something called a penguin crawl that will be in conjunction with the polar bear plunge, just to try to off-season, try to get people out at some of the businesses around town in February, which is a lot of times it's tough to do. So that's, and again, we would be promoting this campaign within these events. That's our goal. So I think what we're looking for from the commissioners is some input and a kind of a green light to go ahead and do this mailing to begin to hopefully raise funds for these projects. And
Mr. Martin, if I could interrupt for just
Sure.
one moment. I know the commissioners in general are going to want to ask this, so I'm going to be one of the first ones to ask, and then we'll ask other commissioners, Mr. Bauer first, and then the other commissioners to make their comments and ask questions. But as commissioner and mayor, we're all going to worry about what the devil is in the details, of course. And I think every one of your projects are really very, very good. And I would support each one of them as long as we had the details that we could understand what the commitment is of the town and what the marketing committee wanted to commit for the town. Was that some of the items that Alex was going to bring in?
well, Alex more was going to, which I just can't pull up on my computer, but he did want to show you the logo that Kelly put together.
Drew, I think I might be able to. Would you like me to put it up on screen?
If you could, that would be awesome.
Let me know if you can see my screen.
There it
can see
is.
it.
Oh, it's on
That's the
screen.
logo. That's the logo that we're going to use. And yeah, I appreciate that, Bill. And so when the mailing goes out, we're going to be using that. That's kind of, you're going to see that basically everywhere in everything we do, any marketing piece. And basically he's going through basically what I just spoke about, but it looks much nicer and does a better job of what I said. So we're just hoping that, you get some feedback on, what do you think of the logo? You think if the logo looks okay? And then if you're going to be okay with us sending out the mailing, and I guess there'd be other questions I'm sure you have on the fundraising aspect of it. So, just let me know.
Well, Drew, one question, like I say, that I had was sort of the details. I'm sure the commissioners are going to want to know what it will cost, what the various items, specific items will entail, and what the cost would be to the town, and what your goal was as far as amount to be raised, et cetera. So if you or Mr. Bauer or Mr. Stevens, who might have, his wife's been involved in this, if you might want to make comments.
Well, I can tell you our goal was to try to raise $30,000. That was our goal for this year.
30?
30.
Yep.
Yep.
And that's
And
the
that-
offset, the Sposato beautification item in our budget.
That certainly would be a major benefit to the town.
Yes, it
Yeah.
would.
So let's get some of the other commissioners involved here. Mr. Stevens?
Yeah, just a few different comments. You know, I brought this back up. You can see the chart that Drew had talked through. I think it's a great representation. The thing that does come to mind is what Dale had mentioned, or I'm sorry, Mayor Cook had mentioned, is the unintended consequences. I think it might be beneficial, and I'm not putting this on the marketing committee, but there are unofficial weekends in Dewey, whether it's the Greyhound weekend or the Golden Retriever weekend. Might want to get a list to make sure that we're not overlapping and bringing in people when we don't have anybody coming into those specific weekends. I will tell you firsthand knowledge. There was an organization that did a flower mart when I was in Baltimore several years ago. It took a little bit of time to gain some traction, but it was an unbelievable fundraiser, similar to if you had schools doing mulch sales. And it's finding the organization that will, supply all the flowers, central part of getting it, and the town getting a percentage. So it's really unique. It's a really great idea, Drew. So I just wanted to throw that back at you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, we're really excited about that. I mean, I know, for instance, on the flower mart, one of the items that we talked about was depending on who we work with, which landscaping company or florist or whoever we work with on this, of doing a concentration on palm trees, because everybody probably likes palm trees at the beach and like to grab a palm tree. So that was one of the ideas from the committee, that was going to be one of the focus of that flower mart. And again, we haven't nailed down a day because we have to come up with a location as well. I know we were going to approach, with Kelly being on the business partnership as well as one of our members, she was going to approach probably somebody at the Lions Club or something else for being able to use that location. So,
and if I could just make one other comment, and this is more towards Mr. Zolper as well as the rest of the commissioners. I know in years past, we used to bring in dumpsters prior to the season. It became a relatively large cost. I don't know if we're planning on doing that again, but I'm sure that as a resident, it was a wonderful benefit as a town resident. So I'd like you to consider that as part of the beautification also, if that does become part of the dialogue.
Well, Mr. Bauer, I was wondering if you could possibly address, again, we're talking about, as always, if we're going to approve or give some advice on this, we would want to know initial cost to the town of each item and what you thought it might raise and who might be running it, the who, how, and the when of each item.
Yep. So what, the first step is to let people know that we're trying to raise money and their money would go towards a specific purpose, right? So that's what the purpose of the mailer is. We're already doing the mailer, so it's just including a few more sheets of paper in there. So I don't think there's a cost, but I don't think it's much cost. It's probably not going to raise our postage bill too much. So since it's already going on, timing is everything. So if we can include it in this, so we're not doing a separate mailer, I think that, that keeps costs at a minimum. So I think that's good. And I have every confidence they're going to raise the money. I mean, years ago, I go back to the Civic League of when they used to do the beautification for the town. It was $30,000. I'm sure we spent that as a Civic League, everybody just donating their time and effort to do it. And I think it engaged the whole community too. And there's so many benefits to it. The people that don't want to donate to it, they don't have to. I mean, it's a purely volunteer donation. So, but it's nice to recognize people when they give you something, right? So, and I think that's part of, we want to do some recognition for those. Maybe we can put them on a website or something like that. So these are things that aren't really going to cost the town any money. Alex is on the line. Alex, was there any upfront cost we needed for anything?
No, there wasn't. Really, the thought was to except for we were going to leverage the town mailing. So there was the opportunity around that, which is already being covered. And then the thought was that we might have, some setup costs just for the flower mart or the art show Easter egg scoop, but they'd be really minimal. And the thought is that we would be able to cover that cost with the fundraising.
Right. Yeah, whatever we spend, we're going to get it back, multiple times.
Well, I would ask Drew, this is Dale Cook, I would ask Drew and Mr. Hanna, I can understand that you would get an approval, I would think, get an approval from the commissioners today on the general idea, the general concept. When would we then go through where I'm sure the commissioners would want to, at various stages, have some information / approval of, like overall, if you're going to have an overall expense of a lot of money, like for instance, the bricks, if you ever get to that point, or changing a large area might cost some money, we would have to approve the expenditure. Other than approval today for the general concept, what is it that you're looking for?
Well, the one thing I failed to also say, because one of the centerpieces that we want to be working towards, and this is something, we're talking about maybe a 4 or 5 year thing, but ideally we want to have a large sign located down near the Bay Walk, and we're thinking either on the pavilion side or on the side, the entrance, where on the rudder side, the entrance to the Bay Walk. And this sign would be something that people could donate towards, and also be able to have a small plaque on the back of it so that they get some recognition for the sign. And we don't have any designs yet on that sign, but that's one of the items, and I forgot to make note of that. But you're going to see information about that in some of these mailings that we do, that's one of our goals is to have that. So anyway, I wanted to make sure I got that in there.
Yeah, and I can weigh in on that one a little bit as well. Because a couple things, and I haven't filled Drew in on this yet. So this is, I just heard this yesterday and put a call in. But the Delaware Division of Tourism, social media is a big thing for everybody. And, I can't tell you how many people take a sunset picture and families and everybody else getting in it, but something to identify where they're at. And they tag Dewey Beach and, that kind of good stuff. But so I put a call into the Delaware Division of Tourism person who handles that. They pay for the artist, the design, and all that kind of stuff. So, but it's premature. We don't have anything yet. But at this point, it wouldn't cost us anything to do it because of and they're doing it for other towns. So I'd like them to do it, at least give us ideas for here.
That'd be awesome. That would be great.
Could I ask Mr. Stevens to, or whoever put up the information on the screen, to take it down so we could see everybody's faces? I'm going to see a few.
You got it.
Thank you very much. I'm the typical dinosaur when it comes to electronics. So
We just need to get you a bigger screen.
Turn it sideways. Other commissioners, do you have any comments?
No,
Mr. Jasinski.
Just thank you guys for all the work. I mean, it sounds like a great list of events.
Well,
Commissioners, if I may just say a word.
Go right ahead.
First of all, my apologies for being late. I was pulled into a work meeting, but under the leadership of Chair Martin and Commissioner Bauer, the committee is incredibly excited about this. If you think about the way that the holiday lights this past winter really provided a centerpiece for us to come together as a community, we see this as an opportunity to build off of that. And so, Drew had mentioned the idea about the artwork. That would be something we'd want to get input throughout the entire process. But as Commissioner Bauer mentioned, people are looking for something to capture that they're here, that they love Dewey Beach, and there isn't that sort of landmark right now And we think that there's a huge opportunity around this. Obviously, we need to build a strong foundation. So these initial events are a test to see if we can raise the funds to help the town of Dewey. But long-term, we think there's a huge opportunity to build on them and build momentum for people visiting and who live here. So just, we're really excited about the opportunity. So thank you for considering it.
Well, thank you all for all the work you've done.
Yeah.
Commissioners, do we want to put forth a motion to accept the general plan, or Mr. Persinger?
Well, I will offer a motion. Well, I'll just go ahead and offer the motion and then make some comments. I move that we adopt the plan as outlined by the marketing committee.
And I second that motion.
And motion made by Mr. Persinger to accept the plan as outlined by the marketing committee, second by Mr. Stevens. Discussion, Mr. Persinger?
Yeah, I would just say, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ashley.
Sorry. There was already a motion made by Commissioner Persinger and seconded by Commissioner Bauer prior to the conversation
Oh,
took place.
I don't remember that. It was so long ago. Thank you, Ashley.
We already had a motion, Ashley?
That's great, Ashley.
Before the conversation began, there was.
Thank you very much. And who was the second?
Commissioner Bauer.
Commissioner Bauer. Very good. Mr. Persinger, go ahead then.
Okay, I was just going to say, I think this is a really good and substantive project for the marketing committee to work on, and potentially a real contribution to the town. Just 2 points. The marketing committee does have some seed money built into the budget. I think proposed for FY22 is about $2,000, I believe. I just think it will be important whenever they begin to develop each of these activities, if there is any upfront cost, that they keep the commissioners informed on that. And I think you said this already, with some idea of what the potential fundraising potential is for that particular activity. And then lastly, I know that you're going to be part of the mailing in March. And I think you've got another meeting scheduled before that mailing goes out. And I presume that's to develop messaging. Have you begun to think through what some of the messaging might be that will go out with this mailing?
Yeah, we do have a meeting next Thursday. So we will, that is part of our agenda.
Okay. But any preliminary ideas on how you'll structure the messaging?
Well, I don't want to speak for Alex. I'll say one quick thing. And what we're trying to do when we do this mailing that we're involved is not make it extremely detailed. I mean, very, very, very general and very general terms, because we don't want to put ourselves in a corner of where the funds are going to be used. That's why we talked about the signs and everything, and that's one of the things that we've got to discuss. Are we going to say specific things other than the beautification of Dewey Beach projects revolving around that? So that's what I believe we really have to hash through to make sure that when we do that mailing. Other than that, I'm sure Alex has something.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, to add on to what Drew was talking about. So we're gonna keep it high level. It is gonna be really reminding and talking about the connection that people have to Dewey Beach, whether they're residents full-time, whether they visit, and then identifying and saying, look, we want to be able to recognize, we're still identifying what that looks like, but there's an opportunity for you to give back and to really play a role in the community as we beautify the town of Dewey Beach. So it'd be high level. We might even have a couple pictures of areas of Dewey Beach just to remind some of the people that might not be here right now, but receive the newsletter, and leverage that to an opportunity to give back. So we haven't finalized the messaging. We've talked about it at a very high level, and we'll do that at the next meeting.
All right, thank you.
Great.
Any other questions from any other commissioners? Ashley, could you read the motion that was made off again, please? Because I don't remember it.
Was motion by Commissioner Persinger to accept the recommendation from the Town of Dewey Beach Marketing Committee for possible fundraisers to offset beautification expenses in the proposed fiscal year 2022 budget. And it was seconded by Commissioner Bauer.
Great. All right. There's a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion? I'll call the question then. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? It's unanimous. Mr. Martin, Mr. Hannah, and Mr. Bauer. Thank you very much. Thank you all from the marketing committee. We hope it's very successful, and come back and please and ask us for any help that we can give.
Yep, I couldn't be happier with the talent that we have on this marketing committee. So they're doing a great job, and we thank you all from from the bottom of our hearts for it, man. You're doing a great job.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Mr. Hanna, did we thought maybe you were retired like Mr. Stevens is?
I'm working on it.
Thank you all again. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
I'll see you.
All right. If there's no further discussion on that, we'll move on to the next item, number 7, discuss and possibly vote for changes in police staffing level for the town. And we have Mr. Zolper, and our town lieutenant, and Mr. Hocker, and our town police chief, Mr. Mackert, online. Mr. Zolper.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and commissioners. Greatly appreciate your time. Today's about day 45 for my employment here with the town. And during that time, I've been able to talk with each one of the department heads, evaluate what they're doing, get their input, what their needs are, what things are going well, where they have some challenges, and looking at some of their equipment. Some of that equipment will be talked about under number 8. But looking at staffing levels, in some areas, I believe we are just getting by. Okay, and when I say that, we are just getting by. And what does that mean? That can open us up to liability and possibly lawsuits, especially for our police department. And when I look at staffing levels for our code enforcement, last year we saw what happened when we didn't have enough code enforcement people. So to provide for our employees to serve the citizens in the town of Dewey Beach, I've looked at what I think our needs are and kind of put them in a priority, right? And one of the first things that I think we need to do is look at the police department and numbers that we currently have. Now, based on my over 30 years of law enforcement between the FBI and the state police, talking with Chief Mackert, talking with Lieutenant Hocker, there is a real need for a 10th police officer. You look at the Warren report. The Warren report says we should have additional full-time officers out there. And I came up with a list of different reasons for between the chief and I on what those reasons are. And I'd like to go over those with you if that's okay, Mr. Mayor.
Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah. Currently during our night shift, we run 3 shifts. And basically that's between 6 at night and 4 in the morning. We have, when I say that, there's 3 officers that make up that shift at night, okay? One of those officers consistently is one of our, I'll call them a full-time, part-time officer. We have 2 of those right now. Both of those individuals have been trained at the State Police Academy. Both of those individuals are not getting any benefits from the town. But I say that if we added an additional full-time officer, that would alleviate us from our busiest weekends during our holidays, Memorial Day, 4th of July, during our summer weeks where we have a large majority of folks in town. And then also for when Dewey goes pink in October, we have a large majority in town for that. By having another full-time officer kept up with the standards of the police chief and the lieutenant here, that would benefit not only the police department, but the citizens of our town. Also, when you look at training one of these, if we should lose an individual, when you look at training, you're talking about sending that person away to the State Police Academy for 6 months at a time. Then there's field training that goes along with that. Essentially, it takes a year to bring a new person up to the training levels that we want to have them in and doing. From talking to the chief, he agrees with that. A recent article in the Cape Gazette, from the Lewis chief, they just hired 2 new officers. And he said, basically, when you have to hire a new officer and send them through the academy and do all the additional training and the field training that goes along with it, you're spending approximately $100,000. And Chief Mackert completely agrees with that. And part of that is an 800 hours worth of training that new officer has to go through. Additionally, working the different shifts, having a full-time officer there, especially during the summer, when we have as many as 15 or more part-time summer officers, the ones that we hire for the summer, and then the ones we bring in from other municipalities during the big weekend, If we get an officer that is stopped on a traffic stop for a DUI, we get another one of our full-time officers that has to arrest somebody and take them back here to town hall for processing. Now you've got 15 of our summer officers, possibly 10 to 15 out there on the street. You've got possibly a part-time officer from another municipality in charge of those individuals. By adding another full-time officer to that staff, that would alleviate some of that condition. Plus, it's a huge liability for us if we've got both of our full-time officers during the summer tied up, and then you've got nothing but part-time officers out there on the street. By throwing a third full-time officer out there, that could alleviate. That doesn't mean it couldn't happen that all three of them get tied up on something, but it gives us a better opportunity to have a full-time officer out there on the street. Spoke with Captain Warren. I spoke with him Wednesday and I spoke with him yesterday from the Warren report. Okay. He says there's a strong need for a 10th officer and he listed a number of reasons. And I could actually go in and read from page 21 if the commissioners like to hear why he thinks we need that officer. And I'll go ahead. It appears that the geographical location and demographics of the area and the special circumstances, such as having a jurisdiction which invites an overly large number of visitors during the summer months, it generates large volume of calls. Our officers handle a large volume of calls for service in Dewey Beach that hiring an additional full-time police officer would allow for at least 2 to 3 regular patrol officers during an evening shift, one which would guarantee to be a full-time officer and possibly even a supervisor in capacity. And he adds some additional comments to that on page 21. In talking to him yesterday, he said there's a strong need for that type of third officer there for shift coverage, commitment to the organization. It helps maintain stronger morale, allowing our officers to take time off when needed during the off season, and allows better coverage during our busiest time. So one of the things that Captain Warren found in his report when I reviewed that is our officers aren't getting enough training. So I agree with Chief Macker. During the summer periods is not when we should be doing training with our folks. Our training should be done during the off season. And even now during the off season can be busy. But by having that third officer full time will allow us to send the other officers to training when necessary. And again, it goes back to liability. Situation in this country over the last year and a half or so, we really need to be thinking about our officers being trained up to capacity in liability. And one of the areas that we need to improve is training and community outreach. And by having another full-time officer, we'll have another person on the street that will get to know the citizens and the business owners of Dewey Beach. You may ask now, how are you going to pay for it? So the chief and I sat down, and the chief can go into numbers a little more into detail, but we put into the budget 20 summer officers, 20 part-time summer officers. If we take that down to 15, we can make up the difference in hiring one of our part-time officers full-time. Chief, do you have any other comments on that?
You spoke exactly what Sheena. I want to give her some credit. We've been working with.
Can't hear you, Chief.
Can you hear me, Mr. Mayor?
I can hear you. I couldn't hear the chief.
Okay. Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, good afternoon. As Bill just said, we worked the numbers. We had put in for 20 seasonals. If we went down to 15, that's one less than you had last year. We can make this work without any additional funding or any additional cost to the town by bringing by filling that spot. So there won't be any additional cost on the town at all. And that's how we can fund that position without incurring any more expense for the town.
I'm going to interrupt a little bit, Chief. You mean that for the coming year?
Correct. In the budget cycle, that's correct.
But it would add to additional funds in years after that.
If we stay, Mr. Mayor, if we stayed at 15 instead of going to 20, if we did, it would cover that essentially.
But you feel that you can get proper coverage with the 15 versus the 20?
Yes, and Mr. Mayor, on the national level, and as a town manager spoke about, I've seen some legislation on the national level, and there's currently legislation at the state level. Police work as we know it is going to be changing. It's going to get more complex. There's going to be more requirements placed on us. And I feel, again, very strongly, like the town manager said, for the reduced liability, to have that full-time officer out there with more training, getting to know our community. It's going to be a win-win for the town all the way around. And one of the things I've experienced so far, we aren't getting the amount of applicants for seasonal police officers this summer. I've talked to Chief Banks from Rehoboth. Chief Banks is experiencing the same low amount of applications coming in there. So in theory, yes, we'd like to have 15. There's a good chance we may not get them this summer. There is not a big rush for applicants or potential police applicants right now, given the climate of the country. That's a big concern. And you can't do like we did in years past. If you wanted to fill that slot, you hired someone. With the way liability is anymore, we have to have the top people fill those spots instead of just an individual to go out on patrol. We have to make sure we get the best of the best. And if that person's not suited to be a seasonal foot patrol officer in town, I don't want to bring him on board and expose it.
I got you, Chief. I'm going to interrupt for a minute. I didn't mean to totally take away from Mr. Zolper. If he, I want him to finish his statement so that the other commissioners have questions they would like to ask. So, Mr. Zolper, first, if you finish with your presentation, and then Mr. Jasinski has hand up, and we'll go to other commissioners with questions there. So,
yeah. So the one thing I will say is that at any time, any of our officers could leave. Okay. Any of our officers could leave to go for another job, or there may be one or two that decide to retire. Okay, so that could happen at any point. There's no guarantee that if we make one of our part-time officers a full-time officer, that still could happen. But it at least gives us that extra body that we will have available to pull from. So instead of going down to we'd be at 10, instead of going down to 8, we could go down to 9. So with that, pending any questions, that's my presentation on the extra officer for the department.
all right, if we hold off, I had Mr. Jasinski, then Mr. Bauer, then Mr. Stevens with your hand up.
Yes. So my question is actually for Chief Mackert. My concern is more on the seasonal side and the reduction of the 5 officers on the seasonal side. Going back over the years and taking 2020 out of the equation because it was, such a different year. What's the minimum number of seasonal officers that we've ever had on the town police force with all your years here? Do you happen to know that?
It was 19, sir.
So we've always had at least 19.
19 was the lowest.
Yeah. So I guess what my question is I totally get why you want an additional full-time officer and the benefits of that. My concern is with, the kind of crowds we have here in the summer. How are you going to make 15 work?
It's gonna be tight. We're gonna prioritize the calls. We're gonna have them out there being very visible. But last year at 16, halfway through the summer, I would say the population really picked up down here. It worked. We had them out there being very visible. I believe we can make it work at 16. We've never once had to, tell somebody it's going to be a half hour or 40 minutes before we can get a police officer to you. We didn't run into that.
Mr. Jasinski, is that all right?
Well, I guess what I'm kind of wondering is, should we really be planning on in 2000, and this is calendar year, in 2022, having this additional full-time officer and probably going back up in staff level on seasonals? I mean, it sounds like you're kind of saying that it's going to be tight and that we really need to plan long-term on a higher seasonal one than the 15.
Okay, Mr. Zolper, do you want to answer that?
Yes, sir. So keep in mind when we looked at the numbers of the reduction for the summer officers, Mr. Commissioner, we were trying to keep us for 2022 from going into the red. And this was before we made a decision on the hotel tax. I have talked to the mayor, and I have been trying to keep us in the black without having to go into the monies that we will be getting in from the hotel tax. So that was one of the reasons we went to the number of summer officers reduction to bring in the full-time officers. Commissioner Persinger thought we would get about $90,000, maybe $92,000 from the hotel tax starting July 1st through March 31st of 2022 budget year. But I was trying to do this without pulling any of those funds.
All right, thank you.
All right, Mr. Bauer?
Yeah, so I'm looking at it from two things. I mean, what sticks out to me is that, so this is a revenue neutral proposition here. So we're shuffling money around to create one more full-timer and less on the part-time stuff. So that actually sounds good to me. I mean, I think I'd rather have a more qualified, full-time officer that's going to stick with us long-term versus a short-term seasonal employee. But the other side of it is, we spent a lot of money to hire Dr. Warren to do a report for us, and he's made a number of recommendations. And I know we've done some of the things, and this sounds like this is right along the path of taking them up on. I'm not qualified to run a police department. I don't. I trust the experts on this kind of stuff. So if Dr. Warren thinks we need it, and Chief thinks we need it, and our town manager thinks we need it, I'm in favor of it. So that's my 2 cents worth.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Stevens?
Yeah, I very similar responses to this town manager as Mr. Jasinski and Mr. Bauer. We have an outside document that tells us what you need to do to your job. As part of what we do as commissioners, I think, is to provide the tools to protect the residents and protect the visitors in every way, shape, or form. I understand of the shuffling, and I understand the importance, and I support the importance of bringing on additional full-time people. And I know that that may be perceived as a use of proceeds that we didn't necessarily anticipate, or anytime we have an FTE conversation, it may be frowned upon. But I am 100% support of continuing to support our police department and continuing to do what is at the core of what we're here to do. My only fear is in the reduction of the seasonals. So I'm not saying that I would like to see how we can find a way to bring somebody on, but taking 25% of the seasonals down, I'm just worried about that risk on the streets, given the fact that it's going to be a very, what I feel is going to be a very busy year. So like I said, Ms. Town Manager, I'm in support of bringing this person on to strengthen our police department. I just don't know taking it away from the seasonal is the best use. So.
Was that a?
That was a statement, not a question. It was a statement, not a question.
Okay. Mr. Persinger.
Yeah, I will admit up front that I have absolutely no knowledge of any kind about how to staff a police department. So, we do have professionals on board to do that. If they're willing to go to 15 seasonals, they believe they can manage it and add that additional full-time person. I would support that proposal. The investment in training, I know, is substantial for any police officer. We want people to be well-trained, and to have a part-time police officer who has already gone through that training and to have the potential of losing that police officer to somebody else potentially. I mean, that's always a risk, but in this case, perhaps we're providing some additional safety margin for ourselves in terms of being able to retain a good solid police force. So again, I'm supportive of it. While there may be some concerns about going to 15 seasonal police, if the town manager and the police chief are willing to go that route, then I would support that.
Thank you, Mr. Persinger. I'm going to make a comment. I'll go back to Mr. Zolper first.
So I would just like to say the chief brought it to my attention, and I talked to Captain Warren about it. These summer officers are becoming a greater liability, and I kind of discussed it. But if you look at Rehoboth, their officers no longer say police officers on the back; they say cadets. And I don't even think in Rehoboth they have arrest powers anymore. They have civil. Is that correct? Civil arrest powers. And that's it. Whereas our officers still right now, because the Delaware Council for Police Training allows us to do it right now, that we could lose that next year. That allows them to make arrests. So I just want to let everybody know that even though we like having these summer officers and we need these summer part-time officers, that be something that we can't even call them police officers anymore. We're gonna have to call them cadets. It's something that they're going to be more out there, almost like like the Citizens Patrol that you see in some of the other departments. Like Milton had one for a little while. Some of these other departments. Chief, you have any comment on that?
No, that's correct. Like I said, there's legislative changes at the federal and the state level that's coming. They're talking about it. I've been in a few meetings. I don't know where it's going to go, but I think we need to be prepared for it. And one other thing, commissioners, that I'd like to point out that I've seen in my career. Years ago, we used to have seasonal officers. We would kid with them. 5 summers with us, 6 summers with a department. We're not seeing that anymore. The maximum I'm seeing for a seasonal officer is 2 summers, and usually by the time he's completing that second season with us, a full-time agency is picking him up. So we're losing that. We're losing that year after year of knowledge of the town and where things are located, who the people are. We're not getting that officer anymore because he's moved on, which is good for him. But it really puts a hurting on us because we don't have that experience returning back to us. And I think that's a very good point to let you folks know what we're seeing. But years ago, we used to have, some seasons I remember worked here 5, 6 summers. We're not seeing that anymore. We had it for quite a few years now, from what we've seen. One other thing I like to point out to you, one of our part-timers now, he's let us know the other day that he's going to be.
Can we actually discuss that one of our part-timers will be leaving, or we shouldn't bring that up here in this type of session? Fred, Mr. Townsend.
I don't see the benefit in discussing it publicly. However, you certainly can make policy around the fact that you're going to be one short of what you anticipated earlier in the week. So that's as much as I would say about that.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm going to ask, before I make my comments, I'm going to ask the other commissioners if they have any other questions or comments they want to make. All right.
Is this an appropriate time to motion for vote and discussion?
Well, I'd like to make my comment first, and then I'll let you motion, Mr. Bauer. Thank you. Initially, when I was not in favor of a 10th position in our police department, I didn't think we had gotten to that stage yet, but I took the time and listened to the arguments from the chief and from the town manager and reread some of the report. And I came down to 2 items that bothered me. I was for having a 10th person. I worry about the cost and in particular an additional car that might be needed. And I worry about the fact that are we going to change our staffing during the winter to make sure we don't have one person on duty during the fall and winter time when there are a lot of people out of town. But in past times, we've been limited to one person. And if there's an emergency, we're out of that person and there's been no people in town. So are we going to handle that properly? Mr. Zolper?
So your concern, Mr. Mayor, is that we only have one person on during a shift. So, for example, right now during the nights we have 3 people. One person starts at 5
Well,
o'clock.
I guess I'm not asking you to discuss how many police we actually have on duty. I was just worried. There have been times that I've seen that we've been short personnel during the fall and winter. Will this help address that fact? And what about the police car?
It will help address that by having an additional officer to enable other officers to take vacation when they need to and enable them to go to court and not worry about leaving our shifts short and also be able to go to additional training. When it comes to the police car, I've talked to Lieutenant Hocker and the chief about that, about possibly looking at a used police vehicle and possibly using the LISO money to purchase that if necessary.
Got you. Okay. Are there any other comments or questions from the
Mayor, can I
commission?
answer? Can I, in approximately 2 months, lieutenants informed me we're going to get our Sussex County revenue sharing grant again that will pay for the majority of a police car. And we have the funds in our account to make up what we're short to go ahead and buy a brand new police car in a few months.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate
Yes,
that.
sir.
That
thanks, Chief.
addresses most of my concerns that I had left over. Commissioner Bauer, you wanted to make a motion
Yeah, make a motion to approve this proposal
for a
Second.
10th
Second.
position in the
for
police
10th
department.
position, correct?
Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Jazinski. Mr. Persinger, you want to discuss?
Is the motion specific enough? I mean, what our agenda says is just changes in police staffing levels for the town. Should we make this motion more specific that we're talking about adding one additional police officer, and reducing the summer seasonal staff to 15? I mean, I would suggest that as an amendment to the motion.
I'm fine with that. I'll change my motion to reflect that.
And Mr. Jazinski, you seconded the motion. Do you agree to that?
Yes.
So the motion, Mr. Sander, the motion should read what?
Just read the change you want, Dale, or.
Wait a minute. Ashley's there. Ashley, what do you have that was spoken?
Motion by Commissioner Bauer to approve this proposal for a 10th position, which would bring one full-time additional position and eliminate 5 seasonal officers.
That was an amendment to Mr. Bauer's motion, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Then we have a second from Mr. Jazinski. Do you agree to that change in the motion?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Any further discussion from anybody? Commissioners, I call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays against? Any abstentions? Ms. Sander, that was unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Zolper and Chief and Lieutenant. Okay, we now move on to item number 8. Discuss and possibly vote to permit the town manager to purchase the following items with the existing fiscal year 2021 balances. A, new town-wide phone system. B, purchase of a tractor for town maintenance. C, purchase of a Gator golf cart for code enforcement. D, upgrade the current parking system to the T2 virtual permit platform. And I would ask Mr. Zolper to address these issues, hopefully one at a time, and explain each item.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it. And again, as I kind of said during bullet number 7, last 45 days, talking to the department heads, figuring out what we need to do to make the town work and serve the citizens here, and looking at the 2021 budget. I want to make sure everybody's clear. This is a balance left over. We're very fortunate to have a balance this year of our 2021 budget, but to do some improvements on some equipment that we hope later that we'll be able to set aside in a capital type of investment type of fund for the future, which for whatever reason hasn't been done in the past. So the first item we're going to talk about are the phones. Jim Dedes has done an excellent job working since over a year looking at the current phone system. I'll let him get into the weeds on it, but basically the phone system we have here is over 20 years old. We have 2 lines coming in. This system, one of the things that will do, it will record 911 calls and store them in the cloud. I'll have Jim go over the numbers. Once this thing is installed, though, we will save over $400 a month with this new system. and it's a dynamite system. It's a VoIP system. And with that, I will turn it over to Assistant Town Manager Jim Dedes.
Thank you, Mr. Zolper. Some time ago, our former town manager and I had some difficulties getting equipment repaired with our existing system, which is a Toshiba telephone system. Our contract with Hilliard's for maintenance basically told us that the system that we have is 23 years old. They had originally installed it, and that the Toshiba system that we have is no longer available for maintenance or even repair. So we got the last telephone, I guess it was refurbished by them, installed. Consequently, our system is so old that if you're not around it, if you haven't been around town hall much and you tried to call in, as Mr. Zolper presented, we have 2 lines coming in and it doesn't work very well. To boot, our telephone system is based on Verizon telephone, and we have a separate for local calls, and then we have a separate long distance call. So with that, I reached out to Hilliard's again and said, you all know our system, you've installed it. What can we do to upgrade our system? So they came up with a proposal, which, as Mr. Zolper presented, is a cloud-based system that would integrate all of our offices and would provide a more robust opportunity for us to make calls, to do voicemail, to do conference calling, video conferencing, and so forth. So they had a technician come out to look at the exact system and how we're hooked up. And we came up with the possibility of coming up with 24 to 30 phones right now, which is more, quite frankly, it's 6 more than what we need. But 24 phones is what we would require to change over the system, which actually increases the phones that we already have, and some of us have had to share. They gave us a price of $7,553.91. That's for the installation, the equipment, and that would provide coverage for us through code enforcement, maintenance, town conference, and of course, town hall, life-saving station, and of course, the police department. We did check with the police department, and the system is compatible and will ensure that we have a 911 system operational regardless. Also, one of the side benefits of this, it connects to our smartphones. So should the entire system go down, we can connect with our smartphones and maintain communication and continue doing conference calls and video conferencing. The monthly service charges will be $914.31. That approximately is a little over $400 less than what we currently pay. So there is a savings for this system. The conference calling is something, as you know, right now, we tap into AT&T when we go outside of the system. This will allow us at least for 4 calls internally for different customers, I guess, or us internally to conference call with one another. I've asked Mr. Greg Altimus, he's the vice president with Hilliard's, to be online to answer any specific questions that you all may have. The system is robust. It can, apparently, we can go up to over 100 phones if we need to maintain the system. And they do have operational systems with other communities in Delaware. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to either share what I know or turn it over to Greg if he's available.
Jim, before we turn it over to Greg Altimus, how about you answer a couple questions and then if you can't, you can refer to him.
Sure.
Number one, what was the idea that we would save $400 a month?
Right now, yes, Verizon charges us for all our telephones right now. And I can attest to signing off on Verizon bills when I was acting manager. Right. And I couldn't believe how many phones we have that we pay separately for Verizon. And Verizon's bills, the monthly bills, come into about $1,300 a month.
The monthly bill is $1,300?
Yes.
And it would be $400 less, would be 900 something?
Yes.
Okay, and Mr. Stevens, you had your hand up?
Yeah, Mr. Dedes, I think I missed, what is the investment in the phone system? What is the total cost of the phone system?
The total cost for everything is $7,553.91. It's a one-time cost.
And is there annual maintenance cost of 10 or 20% that we'll see in addition to that?
Not that nope. There's no maintenance. The maintenance basically would be free for the first 5 years. We would have to sign a 5-year contract on that.
So it's pretty much a payback period of 19 months.
Yes,
based upon the savings of what we have on a month-to-month basis.
I agree.
Oh, well done. Okay.
Yep, I agree. 18.75, Bill.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Mr. Persinger?
What's the experience been with this particular phone system? I mean, how long has this been available? Other customers satisfied with it? Any particular problems with it?
I haven't heard any, but I didn't really go out and reach out to everybody, but let me turn it over to Greg.
We do have this installed at other customer sites. They are very happy with it. It's a lot of multi-site installations. So calling office to office and things like that, we've had no problems with it.
If I may, could I ask a few more questions?
Oh, yes, sir. Go right ahead. Tell me when you're finished.
Okay, what would be involved if you wanted to expand the conference call availability beyond 4 parties?
That would be a change of licensing, which would increase the amount per seat slightly. So, and you only have to do it per seat. You don't have to do it for all 30 or 24 or 30 lines, phone sets, I should say. So if you wanted to increase your licensing by 1, you could do it individually.
Okay, all right. And my last question is, we added some time ago the ability to record non-emergency calls into the police department. How would that be handled with this system?
Recording would be available on each handset as the user chooses to record. They would just hit a button.
This is a separate, as I understand it, this was a separate capability that we added within the past year or so. Jim Dedes,
Yeah, we did ask that, and when I talked to Mike Holmes, who was the original person that drew up the contract with us, that was cleared with the police department and the chief, and they said yes, it would record the calls.
Okay, all right. That's all I had. Thank you.
Mr. Zoper, your hand's up.
So Chief Mackard actually spoke with the rep about the recording of 911 calls, and I'd like him to comment on that, sir.
Commissioners, I spoke with the vendor that you're looking at, spoke to him in detail. He was assured me that their system is fully capable of recording the phone calls coming into the police department. He was very familiar with our system.
It would store them on a cloud.
But that's emergency 911 calls. My question was about non-emergency calls.
They're captured and recorded also. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners or comments? Mr. Zoper.
So the big points to this is, number 1, the monthly savings. The number 2, the upgrade to phones that are over 20 years old. We get a storm in here and the phone lines all go down. You can program the phone, instead of ringing at my desk here, it would ring to my cell phone if we're not in this building. So those are huge pluses for us, especially during emergency situations.
Any other comments? Mr. Altmus, did you want to make any comments before we?
No, I don't. It sounds like you guys have it wrapped up.
I think the biggest thing I worried about personally was the coverage with the police department. I want to make sure that we don't come back later and say we had to add something new in order to get to the coverage we have right now. So we're being assured by Mr. Zoper and the chief of police that that's not going to happen. Is that correct, Mr. Zoper?
That's correct. The chief spoke with their rep about that. I know how much money was invested in your system last year for making recording those phone calls. That's a huge concern for me, that if this system didn't do that, I'm not sure we would be doing it. But the chief has spoken with them, Jim has spoken with my half, and they assure us that it will record those calls. And also that system from last year, I spoke with the company and I'm trying to get them to buy it back from us.
Gotcha. Very good. Thank you very much. Just tell the other commissioners that I don't know if you've ever tried to call town hall, and if the main line is busy, 6363, if that's busy, you get switched over to 6502, I believe, or something along that line. But it never tells you you're at town hall in Dewey Beach. It just tells you you're on that line. So I've had numerous people and myself wonder, what the hell, did I dial the wrong number? You know, and they can't change it. There's no upgrading the system. So anyway, so there we are. Now, commissioners, is it your desire? I would think it would be the desire to vote on each one of these items at a time. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I was going to motion, Dale.
Okay, Mr. Bauer, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the new telephone system. I think it's been long overdue. It's 23 years. That's a good run.
Well,
to put
Mr.
that in
Bauer, if
use
you would
case.
add the actual cost into that,
Yeah,
I believe it's
approval for,
$7,500,
$7,500,
$7,553.
Correct. I'd like to make a motion to approve the funding for a new telephone system at 7,500. What was the exact number, Dale?
7,553, I believe.
That's what I want to use.
$7,553.91.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'd
part
like
of the
to
motion,
make a
Ashley.
motion for that.
Mr. Stevens seconded the motion. Is there any further discussion? With the understanding that this is coming from the present year town funds, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against, say nay. Any abstentions? Actually, it's unanimous. All right, Mr. Zolper, your next item.
Mayor,
Gary has something.
just one point. Could you please, this is directed to Mr. Zolper, could you just characterize for us, since we're going to talk about spending money, the surplus, potential surplus money for three other things here. Could you just characterize for us what you expect that surplus to be at the end of March?
Go ahead, Mr. Zolper.
So the breakdown that I have for the, that we would usually go over, and Sheena, correct me if I'm wrong, it says the actual year-to-date difference, Sheena, am I wrong if I say 745,726?
That's correct, because the depreciation that is deducted out is not a profit and loss item. And so we can add that back to the 500,000 that is showing with the depreciation.
Is it?
Mr. Persinger, you have your hand up.
Isn't that figure before set-asides?
All of our set-asides are out. I have taken all the set-asides totally deducted. But even if we count them again, we're still at 300,000 before the, after the depreciation.
Well, I understand. I would just like to have a reasonably accurate figure. I mean, when I calculate, if I look at net operations, I look at summary, we can come back to this. We can come back to this. We're going to talk about the financials. I don't want to belabor this point. So there's at least this somewhere in the neighborhood, let's say $500,000 just for right now. So there should be plenty of funds to hopefully handle the other things that we're going to talk about.
Correct, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Persinger. I think that's a good question. Mr. Zolper, you want to move on to the next item?
Yes, continuing on evaluating what we have out there, talking to Don Richard, our maintenance person. I asked him about the tractor when I was over around the lifeguard station, and it was like it was years old. To find out that we purchased that tractor in 2005, so it's approximately 16 years old, right? I asked Don, how's it running? He said he's had to replace multiple hoses on it, and it takes him anywhere from 25 to 45 minutes to get it started. So when looking at what we need to do the work, maintenance work around Dewey Beach. Example, this morning at 7:15, Don and I were down on New Orleans Street, Oceanside, looking at a large piece of the road that has been torn up by trucks going down there and making U-turns. Is that something that we want to try to patch ourselves? Is that something that the state comes in, or is somebody we want to hire a contractor with? Don is also trained by DENREC. he's got the approval to work on the dunes because he attended a 3-day training class. Some of the things that he has to do on the dunes is putting out the beach mats, which we just purchased some this year. He has to move the sands around at both ends of those beach mats. He has to move the lifeguard chairs. If there is a dead animal that floats up on the beach, whether it's a dolphin or a small whale or some type of small mammal, he usually DENREC asks him, or somebody from the fish services asks him to bury it. Okay, so when I looked at what he requested, I looked at what Rehoboth has. Rehoboth has the same piece of equipment in their budget, and then I looked at what DENREC is using currently doing their dunes on the south end of Rehoboth. We look at a vehicle that looks like this. It's a tracked vehicle. It's less than 6 feet wide with the shovel in the front that will fit over the dune crossings and do the work. It has a rollover cage. That's one of the things that Don pointed out to me when he's currently working with our tractor. It's got a short wheelbase, and when he gets up on the side of the dunes, sometimes it feels like it'll turn over, and he doesn't feel very safe in it. So I went and got 3 estimates on that piece of equipment. Okay, the first estimate was for a John Deere. It came in at $50,412.04, and that was for the equivalent of what I showed you in a John Deere. The second one was the Kubota that I just showed you. It came in at $53,415.81, and that's also with a backup camera and forks added onto the front of it so we can move lifeguard chairs and those mats. The third item that I checked out was a Bobcat, basically the same thing, tracked vehicles. It came in at $53,706.40. But when I looked at DENREC and what Rehoboth's using to work on their dunes, they came back to the Kubota. The Kubota is the one that's in the middle. It's not 57, it's not 53, it's 54. When I asked Don, the person that's going to be operating this piece of equipment every day out of the 3, which did he want? He could have said the one for 57. He didn't. He said he wanted the one for 54,000. This is an investment to the town. It comes with a warranty, a 2-year warranty with it. We will take the old tractor. When Rehoboth has their auction, we will take it down there on the flatbed and sell it down there. But this piece of equipment, we need to figure that's going to work for at least 9 to 15 years. And it's worth the investment, especially moving sand around on the streets, filling in potholes, moving lifeguard chairs, and moving those mats around. And that's something we do every single year. So pending any questions, that's all I have on the presentation for the tractor.
Mr. Zolper, what was the cost of the Kubota that you said you wanted to buy?
$53,415.81. And that's the state contract. That would be the state contract for that vehicle, the Kubota.
53415.81.
That's correct.
Okay. Questions and comments from the commissioners? Hearing none. Mr. Bauer?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the purchase of a vehicle here for $53,415.81.
Second.
Second, put forth by Mr. Bauer, seconded by Mr. Stevens. Is there any further discussion from the commissioners? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Against? Any abstentions? Unanimous, Mr. Sander. Mr. Zolper, go ahead with the next item.
So the next item, I looked at both golf carts and small gators. When I say small gators, if you've seen the gator that our maintenance team has, it's an older one, it's pretty big. If you see the one the police department has, it's pretty big. This would be a smaller gator. It's a 6100 series gator. The one from John Deere. I looked at golf carts. I thought golf carts would be the way to go on this. You know, the electric golf carts, the lithium batteries. It would be quiet on the beach for our code enforcement folks. Be quiet on the streets. But when I started to ask Dave Lynham, who operates the golf carts on the beach, to sell his Italian Ice, and when I spoke with Todd Fritchman about what we should use on the beach, the lithium batteries were not the right piece of equipment. Number one, the batteries don't do well down around the salt air. Number two, the batteries has a gauge on it, and if we don't get back to plug it in on time, we're pushing it up the street. So, and believe it or not, the golf carts I was looking at with $9,700, $11,000. And those are for 4-inch lift kits on these golf carts. They've got these huge lithium batteries in them. They've got the cover over the head, and they have turn signals and lights and everything. But at the end of the day, it's not the right piece of equipment for Merle, for the department head, code enforcement, for her team that's got to not only do parking, but also on the beach with dog enforcement. When I say dog enforcement, I mean dog waste enforcement and dog licensing enforcement. And if you've been on the beach recently, there is a problem with dog waste down there. I've asked code enforcement and Todd Fritchman to get together and come up with a plan and present that to me before April 1st on how we're going to address that. But part of that plan is having a vehicle that code enforcement can use. And the vehicle I'd like to propose to the commissioners is a John Deere Gator. And I used a state contract based on the chief's suggestion with Taylor Messick up in Harrington. And that is a John Deere Gator HPX 61E. And that's a 4-wheel drive Gator. It has a dump bed in the back of it. It comes with turn signals. It comes with a cover. It comes with a shield. It'll hold 2 people, plus it will carry gear in the back of it. That cost is $11,877.02. That's $11,877.02. And I truly believe the Gator will hold up better than the golf carts on the beach. That is our state contract with Taylor Messick. That's who the chief's been getting his Gators from. And I believe that's where our Gator came from for the maintenance department. So I would request that the town commissioners consider that for code enforcement, for parking, and for our folks that'll be working on the beach. Pending any questions, that's all I have on the Gator.
Commissioner Bauer, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve a John Deere HPX 61E at a cost of $11,877.02.
I'll second that.
Put forth by Mr. Bauer, seconded by Mr. Persinger. Is there any discussion on the matter? Mr. Zolper, the only discussion I have on the matter, is that going to be able to carry all the equipment we need for moving for that department carried around, say, on the beach and off the beach?
It will have a bed in the back of it. I don't know how much of equipment you would need, but it does have a bed on the back that will be coated like a bed liner. It won't rust, so they can throw things in there. So for example, Mr. Mayor, if they wanted to use the boots, right? I think we have 8 boots in the city. You could put a boot in the back of that and go boot a car, even though the police department has turned their van over to code enforcement for mainly booting. This vehicle could also be used for booting.
Very good. That's the question I had. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion to buy this item at $11,877.02, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Any abstentions? Unanimous. Mr. Zolper, go ahead with the last item.
So the last item is a virtual parking mobile app of enhancement. And I know Commissioner Persinger and Commissioner Jasinski are familiar with this. And I apologize, I didn't have enough time today really to get into it with our code enforcement director. The particulars maybe as both those commissioners have. It's something that we need to look to the future. So for example, Merle will go into this more in depth, but if you were coming down in the month of July and you rented a house for the month of July, instead of having to come here to town hall or go to one of our kiosks to get the parking permit, you could log in from home, pay for it at home, and you would register your vehicle tag that you would have down here. So when you pulled in July 1st, you could go right to your rental or right to wherever you're going. And when you left at the end of July, it would stop, you would no longer, that tag would no longer be good anymore. It's an expensive upfront cost on this, but it's moving in the right direction. And eventually I would like to go to meterless parking in the town. There should be 2 ways, either mobile or transferable type of permit. That would be my goal 2 years down the road. And with that, I will turn it over to Code Enforcement Director Merle.
Hi. So this basically is another option for someone to pay online. What we have right now is the T2 enforcement side. This would just add another way for someone to buy a parking permit online without having to touch anything. One of the good things about it is they wouldn't have to actually be in the town if they wanted to get a permit. Like Bill said, if they're in Virginia and they know they're coming down a certain date, they can register their vehicles where their plate becomes their permit, and they can put their start date and their end date, and all they have to do is come to town. It will automatically start up when they come, and it'll end when they're done their vacation. It's a big upfront cost. Currently, we're paying approximately $6,500 for what we have now. That is the Flexport, which is the online, being able to pay your citation online and the appeals online. And we have 8 mobile app licenses, and all that combined is about $6,500 that we're paying now. To add an upgrade, subscription would be around $9,518.40. To upgrade to professional services is where this parking permit module comes in. It's a one-time cost, upfront cost at $23,220. So the grand total is $32,738.40.
I'm sorry, Merle, what was that again? 32,000 what?
$32,738.40. This includes installation, implementation, configuration, and all training. Also, it gives us the ability to have Park Mobile tie into this system, so the enforcement officers only have to look at one app versus 3 apps. So this will really help the enforcement officers, and it will also give us a chance to, it also makes it easier. So when we transition into LPR, which I would like to do at some point, which is license plate recognition, it will be very easy. The transition will be easy and the cost will be low.
Is that it? Merle?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Zolper, did you have any further comments you wanted to make?
This is a huge cost. To me, it's a huge cost up front. I think the town's going to have to make a decision, either pay now or we're going to pay for this later, because this is the way parking is moving, and we're going to need to stay up with it. Those kiosk machines, our maintenance folks have to pull maintenance on them every year, and that's a continuous cost of about $4,500 to pull maintenance on those kiosks. Eventually, with this type of platform, the thought process would be you would mount devices on either a golf cart or on a vehicle and be able to go down the streets and read the tags and find out who's paid and who hasn't paid. That should be our goal, and this is a start to get to that goal.
Thank you, Mr. Zolper. I have a few statements, and I'm going to go to Mr. Stevens. He had his hand up. Merle, if you could answer a couple questions for me. Will this, in effect, change the line item in the budget for income on the meters? Because it will have more people spending money in a different way, even though it certainly won't lower, it might even increase the parking money we get, but will it affect the line item for meters?
I'm not sure about that, but I do know that anything that we can do mobily that people do not have to touch anything at this point is a big seller. Also,
Gotcha.
Park Mobile's revenue brings in much more revenue than the kiosks or anything else. So I think if anything, it would make more money.
Gotcha.
For the line item.
What happens if I'm out of town, log into the system? I think you said you could do that. and then get my permit ahead of time. If I don't come to town, I still end up paying that permit, right?
So the system generates letters a week before you come. So they will get a letter. If any changes need to be made, they can just call the parking department, or they can set up their own account and they can go in and manage if they decide to change the dates or cancel.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and then the last one, you said it integrated all the systems. All right. I mean, we spent a lot of money over the last few years on these automated systems, which I think is going to make us money in the long run. But all the systems are integrated now. They will be able to speak to each other.
Only Park Mobile, the kiosks, no. The kiosks would have to be a separate app. But if you look at the numbers for what we bring in on the kiosks versus Park Mobile, it's a huge difference.
Okay. Mr. Stevens, you're.
Yeah, I had a few questions, Meryl. Well, if I'm coming in for, and maybe you just answered it for me, but if I'm coming in, can I get seasonal, weekly, monthly through the system?
Yes.
And so we're going to be logging everybody through the same system. There's not going to be multiple systems, correct?
Correct. It'll be one system. And another thing that you can do too is if they're already in the system because they got a citation, it helps with having them pay the citation because we can set it up. So if they want to get a permit for the weekend, they would have to pay the citation that's outstanding. Before they
what
get the
about
permit.
what about for daily parking? Would they be using the same system? I just want to make sure I understood. Because
they
Mr.
could.
Mayor said the kiosk. So everything's going to go through the same system, one platform, easy accounting. Obviously the 23,200 is a big number. Will pay for itself over time, which I think is the point here. Either we're going to spend it now or spend it later. So I understand that. With this being a centralized platform for people coming to town, I guess you'll get through it from our website.
Yeah, there can be a link through the website. But it would be a T2 website. Like they pay their citation, they have to go onto our portal to pay a citation. So it would basically be the same thing. It's not a mobile app. They have to go online to this specific
Platform.
Sorry.
It's okay. So there'll be a link on our website that says, parking. There'll be kiosks in town that people can basically file if they don't have a computer. You have to have a way for people to log in, correct? So there'll be kiosks in town for people to take care of that.
Or they can.
But I think you just answered my next question, which is it doesn't have a mobile app.
It's not a mobile app. This is not a mobile app. This is an online platform only.
And Mr. Stevens, what do you think would be the effect of not having the mobile app? I don't understand it myself.
I can easily just get on my phone and be done with the parking. That's all. It's a much easier platform versus logging into a computer.
And is there why then is there a possibility of going to either one, or why then are we going to this platform rather than the mobile app?
It may just be that you need to go through the internet on your phone if you have a smartphone. There's three things I was concerned about. One, having multiple ways of people paying. And what Meryl just said, no, it's all going to go through the app. So there's going to be very little human interaction. The two is to be able to log in versus on your computer as well as on your phone by downloading an app. But there's not an app, which just means that people will have to go use the internet on their phone versus just an app. The third piece, if I'm a dinosaur and I don't have a computer and I don't have a phone, I can at least go to the kiosk to get my parking. So I think she answered all three questions.
Okay. And Mr. Persinger, your hand's up.
Was Mr. Jasinski first? I think he had his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see Mr. Jasinski's hand.
Yeah, it was up. Thank you, Commissioner Persinger, for seeing my hand. Just give me a down. So, Merle, I was hoping you could just clarify for folks the 32,000 is the incremental cost this year. We are going to have an incremental cost annually of approximately 9K for kind of the software renewal and maintenance on an annual basis, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And, you know, from my perspective, it's as Commissioner Stevens put it, I really do think it's pay now or pay later. This is kind of, what year is this? You know, we have to be able to do this type of stuff online. When you say there's no app, though, in terms of people doing a permit online, the app that customers use, it's mobile, it's phone friendly, right? I mean, you don't necessarily have to have like an iOS app, you know, for something to be web friendly. It's web friendly from a phone, right? I've never used it, so I don't know.
Yeah, so it's just a website you go to.
Okay.
You just go to a website. You can sign in as a guest,
right.
Or you can create your own account.
Yeah, but no one's gonna feel like if they're on their phone, they can't navigate this website.
No.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Mr. Persinger now, I think.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make clear, this system is only for parking permits. We're talking about daily, weekly, weekends, and we're not talking about seasonal for this system, are we?
Yes, you can get seasonals. You can buy a hang tag, or you can do the virtual permit, which is your tag, your
So
license plate number.
you could buy a physical hang tag permit through this system. Okay.
Correct.
And so, but Park Mobile does not go away because Park Mobile is the only system that would handle the hourly parking. Is that correct?
Correct. And with Park Mobile, you can only buy one 24-hour permit. You can't do multiple days.
Okay. And you made a comment earlier that somehow the Park Mobile information would somehow be tied into the T2. How would that work?
Yeah, so it's called check payment. So when the officers go down, they have 3 apps they have to go to right now. It would now be the T2 app on their phone for the enforcement side. And as they go down and put a license plate number in, it'll check the payment. So they don't have to go to a Park Mobile app. It's integrated just in one system.
Okay. So, and that capability or functionality is included in the $32,000 cost?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Mr. Zolper made a comment about the cost of maintaining the kiosks. It sounded like you were saying that the kiosks were planned to go away entirely. Did I mishear that?
So sir, if it was up to me and we could go away, I would do away with them. They are continuous maintenance, but for the time, they're a necessary evil.
Okay. Okay, well, I guess my only question here is, it's not clear to me that pay now or pay later is necessarily a true statement. I'm not sure of that. I mean, I think there's a cost benefit decision here. Is the $32,000 cost worth the benefits that we're going to get? It would be easier for code enforcement. It might be somewhat easier for the individual people who are going to be parking their cars, but is it really going to generate any more revenue? I mean, we generate a lot of parking revenue. We collect a lot of parking revenue. Last year was a bad year simply because I think we just didn't have enough code enforcement people, and I think we probably lost some revenue, largely because there was less activity available in town to encourage people to be in town and take advantage of some of that parking. We really lost a fair amount of revenue there. So I mean, I have some questions about it. I'm not necessarily going to vote against this, but I'd like to know a little bit more about what the real cost benefit equation really looks like here.
Was that a question to one of the
Well, it's sort of it's an open question. If anybody wants to weigh on it, fine. If not, if it's still really an unknown and you really can't predict how much more revenue, if any, you might be able to collect as a result of having the system. I mean, I think we just upgraded this system, as I recall, last year at budget time. We had to vote on some additional costs of upgrading the system, and I don't recall exactly what the upgrade was. But now, just a year later, we're being asked to upgrade the system again. And so I'm just, thinking through what the necessity is of that, and again, what the cost benefit equation is.
I'm not sure about upgrade. We haven't upgraded anything with this T2 system that I'm aware of for 4 years.
There was a specific vote last March. I have to go back, as I recall, last March 27th, I believe, is when we approved the budget. You know, I don't have access to that at the moment. I could probably find it, but
Well, why don't we take the time and look at it? That's a good question. We should take the time and check into it here.
yeah, let me, this will be a test of whether Ashley can find it first or whether I can.
Ashley, beat him out.
All right, I've got 327.
Got it.
And okay, here's what I found. We had discussed and possibly vote to renew the expiring subscriptions for T2 currently in use. This was for a 3-year period. The year 1 cost was $13,000. Year 2 was 14. Year 3 was 14. And maybe this was not an upgrade, but maybe it's just because they were expiring.
It was a subscription to it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how are those, let's just say we're talking about year 1, which would have been this past year. That cost was $13,400. Where's that reflected in our budget?
That is in the IT line, 6010900.
So it's not the parking, there's also a parking meter, parking or permit expense line. And that's T2 is not included there, I take it, is that right?
No, that is the monthly service that we have for the kiosks. And as far as the physical maintenance of them, T2 being a software is under IT.
Okay. So if we're currently paying, let's say, $13,000 a year for this system, we're now going to spend $32,000 and have an ongoing additional cost of $9,000. So this is going to cost us somewhere around $22,000 a year on a continuing basis. Am I reading that right?
Well, the numbers I have right now, it would be 18,000 annual for everything. But I can definitely double check that, but that's the number I got today.
Okay, I was just adding Commissioner Jasinski's incremental cost, annual cost to the 13,000 that we approved last year. So then perhaps there's a savings in the upgrade scenario.
Yeah, Gary, I heard 9,000 versus 6,000, that there's a 3,000 incremental cost year over year. Meryl, is that not true?
So what we're paying right now is approximately $6,500 a year annually.
Right.
With the upgrade, in addition, would be $9,518.40. So it's,
Hold on, I've got the bill right here because it's due in April for the current term. The software subscription, Flex Mobile subscription is $6,500. Then there's enforcement and there's some basic, and our total T2 bill right now comes to $14,000 a year. So you'd be adding the $9,800 whatever on top of that.
But
Yes,
minus
so that
the
would be the-
6,500, right, Sheena?
The $6,500 is the basic software that runs, but then there is additions to it that brings the total T2 bill to $14,000. I've got right in front of me right now that I'm paying in April. What Merle is adding would be in addition to that.
So that's consistent with the figures that we approved last year. Year 2 would be $14,106. So we would be spending $23,000 a year for this system.
Yeah. But keep in mind, that's multiple sides of it. That's not just the customer facing side. That's the enforcement and appeals facing side as well.
Mr. Stevens, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I guess, Gary, I'm just not clear. And I guess what I heard Merrill say is that I heard our bills going now from, the 6,500 was embedded in that 14, and the 65 is going up to 95. So would our bill be 17?
I don't know. I'm just trying to get clarity on it.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page. We're on the same page. I'm just.
Hold on a second.
I have a suggestion.
Mr. Kaczynski, go ahead.
Merle, do you want to spend a little bit more time during the context of this meeting thinking about this, and maybe we go to another line item on the agenda and come back to this so you can make sure that you can present an accurate picture of how this is going to change number wise?
Sure.
To me, it wasn't.
I'm asking, you and Dale as well, I guess.
Yeah, and I have one question on there as well.
Commissioner Bauer, you had a question?
Yeah, and Merle, I don't know if you know this number offhand, or Sheena. How much do we pay, for those tags that hang, the seasonals? How much do we spend? I mean, I'm looking at, if we didn't do that and we did it all virtual, we would have a savings over there as well, correct? I don't know what that costs us. Is that thousands? Is it hundreds? I don't know.
I don't know that answer.
Seasonal parking tags run us about $2,800. I don't have the bill for this year yet, but last year was $2,850.55. We also have the bill for the daily permits, which it'll take me a minute or two to find that because it's not in the same software.
So there's, by going virtual, we're saving ourselves that hard cost of printing these things up. So I think that probably calculates it. Going back to Gary's point about the cost benefit, where are we going to save at? Because it makes sense. I mean, you do have to upgrade your technology, and it is going to make life easier. But how are we going to pay for it? It always comes down to that.
Well, why don't we think about Mr. Kaczynski's idea here?
Yep.
Move on to another item and then come back, and Merle can add up the figures and give us a better thought process on it. And Merle, you may want to contact Mr. Zolper, if you have any questions of him or he has any questions of you, so that you have the correct figures.
Okay.
And in the meantime, we'll go on to the next item if everybody wants to. Of course, number 9, review February 2021 financials. Mr. Zolper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So revenue expected for February was $158,186. Actual revenue for February was $383,947. A difference above expected of $225,761 due to transfer tax being in the above budget. Is that right, Sheena? Thank you. Expenses expected for February, $218,673. Actual expenses for February were more. Actual was $256,741. And the reason for that is that we purchased those the dune mats. And that was the reason we were over for the month of February. Is that correct, Sheena?
Between the dune mats and the police vehicle, which is offset by a grant and LESO funds. So it shows as an expense, but it is totally a wash with our revenue.
Yeah, also for the mats, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I have not received any funds from the state on that. If it does come in, then that will be a wash also.
Yeah, there's a CTF fund attached to that, the cost of those dune mats. So we'll get fully reimbursed on it.
Right. Will that come in and be allotted to this year's budget, Sheena, or?
If I get it by the 31st, it will.
Have we submitted it to Del Dot then for we have the CTF approval. We just need to submit the bill to them. I don't know if we have or not.
That I don't know anything about, but I have the bill electronically. I can, digitized, I can send anywhere.
Yep, we need to submit that. Ashley, you have the contact it goes to, correct?
Wait a minute. Let's. I don't want to get too far off track here. We can handle that one way or the other. But Mr. Stevens had his hand up, but I wanted to let Mr. Zolper finish the line items unless Mr. Stevens needs to ask it right now.
Nope.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Zolper.
Year-to-date revenue expected was $3,414,867. The actual year-to-date revenue is $3,858,672. $3,858,672. Difference above expected is $443,805. Any questions on that? Okay.
That's it.
Year-to-date expenses expected, 3,276,907. Actual expenses, 3,112,946. Difference below expected, 163,961. Any questions on that?
Mr. Soper, I'm going to go back to where it was year-to-date revenue expected 3,858,672,
That's correct.
and actual revenue 3,414,867.
So the year-to-date revenue expected was 3,414,867. Year-to-date revenue expected 3,414,867. The
So
actual
I've got figures reversed on my. It says revenue expected 3,000,008. Revenue actual year-to-date 3,000,004.
That's to keep you on your toes, Dale. Bill has the updated. I gave you a non-updated just to keep you awake.
So sorry about that, Mr. Mayor. You got the wrong number. Make sure we're correcting that in the future.
Well, at least you know I'm paying attention. This dinosaur is trying.
Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to see where I left off. Year-to-date difference expected, 137,960. Actual year-to-date differences, 537,870. 537,780. And then I can go into set-asides. Year-to-date expected set-asides, 136,655. Actual year-to-date set-asides, 186,464.
Mr. Persinger, do you have any questions about the set-asides on that?
Well, it's not about the set-asides. It's just, what our overall surplus looks like right now in terms of year-to-date. As I read it, I'm looking at summary 2, which is one of the documents. I'm not looking at the notes, which I think you guys were looking at. The net operations that's reflected there at the bottom of that summary 2 sheet is 351,337. And if you add back that is after the set-asides have been taken out, and that's also after you have deducted depreciation. So if you add depreciation back in, seems to me that the overall surplus year-to-date should be about 559. That's close enough.
Agreed.
$59,000. Is that a fair statement? Okay. So that's really our net position at this point, which is obviously very good, and more than covers the kind of expenditures that we just talked about. So that was my only question there. I had a couple of other points too. I don't know if you want me to go into that now or wait for a few moments. I don't know if Mr. Zolper had anything else to cover.
Mr. Zolper, do you have anything else you wanted to cover before we go back to Mr. Persinger's question?
All I would have to say is any revenue that's left over into 2021 it's really important that we figure out, as we tried to with the budget audit and investment committee, on how we're going to take that money and how we're going to set it aside. Pending any questions, that's all I have on this.
Okay.
Mr. Persinger, you're next in line.
Okay, well, a couple of things, and one of it's just for clarification. We now have we're showing both a credit for COVID-19 revenues and credit for revenues, and then COVID-19 expenses. I think the expenses were 73,177, and the revenues were 30,899. Are there any additional revenues that might be coming in associated with COVID-19, or is this kind of the final picture that we're looking at here?
There is 3 more portions of grants that the chief and I have been working on, and everything has been submitted. We're just waiting for the CJC to hand over the checks.
Okay. But if in fact you don't get those checks by March 31, they would not count toward this year's revenues. Is that right? Or is there an accounting change here that might be beneficial, Mr. Stevens? Can I defer to Mr. Stevens on that question?
Mr. Stevens, you had your hand up also.
Well, I'll let Gary go finish his, and I'll
Well, he
jump in
just
unless you want to go
deferred to
on.
you.
Well, I was just
Okay.
saying you only have 2 a week.
Well, yeah, Gary, I had the same exact question. So when I looked at that 73,177, I assumed that there was going to be a grant. First question, what made up the 73,177 for the COVID-19 expenses?
Okay, it included supplies that were purchased as far as PPE. It also included the ServPro cleaning of this building and the life-saving station when it was done, and the annex on a weekly basis. That right there is $1,500, almost $1,600 a week. So it kind of adds up a little bit.
So did we prepay that service for the year?
No, I pay it. I get a bill every week.
Because I just see it in February 21's line item on the financial statements as one line, and that's why I was seeing it as one expense there.
There was some confusion. I had originally been putting supplies in each department and in building maintenance, and it was suggested to make it easier for everyone and for my accounting to put all the COVID expenses in one line item and all the revenue in one line item, so that we can see where we stand and not have to wonder why, the police department's building maintenance is so sky high.
I got it. So we basically had an adjusting journal entry in the month of February.
Yes, sir.
Which why you would offset, for example, the town hall op property expense of 1,060 got moved out of there and up into COVID.
Yes, sir.
Likewise. Okay, now I understand. So it is a wash going in and out for all of those.
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's fine the way it is from an accounting perspective. I think, Gary, to your point, whatever amount that we are anticipating in terms of the possible reimbursement at the state level, we could create at the end of March a receivable from that would reduce the COVID-19 expense and put the receivable on the books in the proper accounting period.
Mhm.
And then when the actual happens, adjust accordingly.
Okay.
But it is proper treatment.
Okay, good. Mayor, could I ask just a couple of other questions?
Go right ahead, sir.
Okay. There is an expense item for stormwater maintenance, I guess, and street flooding of $37,253. Can you tell me more about that? And was that actually paid out of our general fund, or was that paid for out of streets and infrastructure?
Currently, it has been paid for out of streets and infrastructure. That is I wanted to make sure I had as many of the bills as possible this fiscal year. And then it was approved to be paid for out of the streets and infrastructure. I wanted to make one lump sum transfer instead of multiple little ones every time.
Okay, when you say a transfer, I'm not sure, how will that impact our statement here? I mean, the way it's reflected right now, this is just an expense. There's no revenue there's nothing on the revenue side to pay for that.
Right, and when Commissioner Stevens, if I'm right, please, when I move the funds from the streets and infrastructure to the general fund, it will show as it's just going to show as money coming in, but it's a behind the scenes wash, correct?
It's a reclassification.
Okay, thank you.
From a fund accounting perspective, yes.
But it's still the same problem that we've had, where we're paying for something out of account that we have money set aside for, but yet it shows up on the expenditure side of our P&L.
I agree with you, Gary. It's almost as if we should have those expenditures below. I assume you're looking at the summary too?
I was
What
actually
document
I was looking at the P&L earlier. I'm just looking at my notes right now, but I'm looking at the P&L statement.
What we can do on the presentation side is to move those where we have the set asides in terms of what we're from a classification perspective, highlight those numbers there, not in the general operating fund. And I'm looking specifically at the general fund financial summary, February 2021, the financial summary 2 sheet, the Excel sheet. Because
Okay,
I think that's going to help us truly look at it from an operating fund perspective.
Correct. If we had our accounting system set up as a government accounting system with the delineations
Yeah.
for the different funds, it would show differently.
Yeah. Sheena, you and I briefly talked, like QuickBooks allows you to put things in classes. So you could have an operating fund class, a street fund class, and that would be probably an easier presentation. Maybe we'll play with that this summer.
Yeah, well, it's something that I have thought about, and if we want to make that change, I'd like to do it at the beginning of a fiscal year or early enough in the fiscal year that I can change the entries, the classifications early and not have to do it, 10 months of data change.
Got it.
all right, I had a similar question, but I don't want to go too far in the weeds on this. I mean, I think the point is we still have an issue. There will be some effort to try to address that and make the presentation a bit more clear and more representative of how we're really operating.
Yes,
So
sir.
I will stop there.
All right, thank you, Mr. Persinger. Mr. Stevens, do you have any other comments?
Yeah, I think Gary and I are aligned here, and I just this is more of clarification from Sheena's perspective. The equipment asset purchase under the administrative of 41,666 in February, is that a reallocation or reclassification? Or
That is the beach mats. I think they're under there, but I know the police vehicle is under there, and that is paid for by a grant and less so money.
okay, so it will be reduced
Yes, sir.
by the grant, at least the money that we can estimate. But technically, again, it should be on the statement of position, or as some of us know as balance sheet, not here.
Correct, sir. And I do
So-
not know why I do not know why it was not moved.
Okay. All right. We're having a great year. We're having an even better year than this is showing because of the classification. Okay, I'm good. Again, everything looks great. We have some work to do. That's all.
Can
I echo Gary's point.
Can I just give a piece of data that I just received just instantly? The transfer tax that will be coming into our bank account this week is $108,000.
Wow.
Darn.
So that will put us up to $1,407,000 in transfer tax in 1 year.
Yes, sir.
I'm really concerned about next year's transfer tax, gentlemen and ladies. I am really
I
concerned
agree.
that there's not going to be the inventory that we anticipate.
I wonder also. So we have to, when we go over the 22 budget, we have to think about that. All right, any other
All right.
comments?
No. Great job, everyone.
Now, do we want to go back to Merle now, Mr. Zolper, or you want to wait till we finish the budget?
Merle, are you ready to present now, or do you want some more time to be prepared for the questions and we'll go to the 2022 budget?
You're on mute,
Mic's
Merle.
off, Merle. You got your microphone. There you go.
Sorry. Let's just wait. I'd like to go over something with Bill.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, we'll wait.
Okay. All right, so then that means we're gonna have to deal with the next line item, which is number 10, review, discuss, and possibly vote to approve the fiscal year 2022 proposed town budget. And we'll initially go to the town manager with his explanation of the budget, and then we'll go to questions for the commissioners. Town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll be upfront with everybody. It's the first budget that I presented. I'm not sure what my left and right limits are. I know Chairman Davis has worked very hard on this budget with his committee. I know Sheena has worked hard on this also to get it balanced where we need. I know we were with the 2% overall, 2% overall raise for the employees. We were up by about $5,000. When we go to 3%, it puts us into the red. And we go to 4% into the red. But I will say, That's not counting the hotel tax. And again, I was trying to do when I was looking at it when I got here 45 days ago, trying to keep us in the black. So I don't know, Mr. Mayor or the commissioners, do we go line by line with this? Do I ask Mr. Davis to discuss how his committee came up with things? How does this actually work?
Mr. Persinger, you look like you want to make a comment there.
Well, no, I was just going to say if Dave Davis is available, and I think, it would be fair to let him have an opportunity to talk about his committee's work and what their feelings are about this proposed budget.
Would you like me to reach out to him to see if he can join?
So he was not, okay. I thought maybe he was lined up, ready to do this.
No, go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
Yeah, Mr. Davies was not asked to be here. Probably it's our oversight, especially the liaison's oversight. Obviously I'm echoing some of the comments that Bill Zolper made. The committee and Sheena just did tremendous work putting this together, going line by line and looking at having some logic to it. I do believe of us doing that again will be repetitive. My point to the commissioners would be, are there any elements, because I'm assuming everyone's reviewed this, that you have any concerns with approving this budget?
Mr. Jasinski.
Well, you had mentioned, and I think rightly so, about transfer taxes. When I first looked at this, I thought that, considering the current run rate of property transfers, that 605 was a very reasonable budget, and I kind of still do. I mean, Sheena just pointed out, we're still going at a pretty good clip level. And to your point, things may cool off, but properties right now are a lot more expensive than they were. So I guess my opinion on that one kind of questionable line item is I don't think the 735, is necessarily the wrong number. That's just my view.
I'm sorry. I have
Sandra, go ahead.
Dave Davis. I have him on the phone right now. He can't log into Zoom, but I can put him on my speakerphone. If anyone has questions, he can answer through the audio if you'd like. He's driving right now. So would you like me to do that, or would you like to just continue on without having him on the call?
Well, Mr. Stevens, did you want him on the call?
I think it would help if any of the commissioners or anyone have questions. He's the one who's presenting this to us, and I think it would make sense to give him.
Okay.
Well, actually, that's not true. Actually, the committee initially put together suggestions, and the town manager presents the budget. And so I have no problem with him being on the call. I just don't want him to take a chance of having a problem with an accident. So he's driving, right?
Does anyone have a question of Dave Davies?
I'll ask, where did they get the percentage for the increase in pay? Your mic's off, Ashley.
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yes.
In our meeting last Friday, we increased from the 2% across the board for wages to 4%. And I believe that's what Bill and Sheena put into the current budget version.
Well, Mr. Zolper, is that what you recommended?
So the committee recommended, Mr. Chairman Davis recommended a 4%. There was a 2%. And when I looked at what the county employees were getting this year, Sussex County employees, when I looked at some of the other municipalities that don't have a time and grade, they are right around the 3%. Some of the municipalities say a cost of living of 1.7, but most of those have a time and grade. So if you're at 1.7 and you've reached your 5th year, you're getting 2.5 on top of that. Now all of a sudden, you're over 3%, 4% for what your increase is. So I think we have to keep that in mind. When we're looking at other municipalities around, we have to look at, how their pay scale works versus cost of living. So when you look at us, all we give our employees is that one pay bump if it was 3%, it'd be 3%. There is no other time and grade in that. The only thing that's an exception is if the chief, and we'll talk about that a little later, if the chief suggests and gives me reasons why somebody needs to be promoted. But short of that, our only pay increase for our employees is this bump we give them right here. So we have the money to do 4% if we go deep, not deep, but if we go into the hotel tax. But I think looking at the county and some of the other towns, 3% is what the medium is right now. And again, this is my first budget. The employees probably deserve a 4%. But this is my first budget, so I'll leave it at that.
Well, the only point I'm going to make is that each year I ask why the committees, come to a conclusion. Last year I asked the exact same question of why they came to a conclusion of 4%. And it was only because, again, this year it was because somebody suggested it, not because there was a logic behind it. And at least that's my opinion. Now, if you call up, if you either Google or go online and see what has been suggested for the federal government this year, it's 2.2 with a 1% locality increase, meaning if you live in Washington or San Francisco or New York, you get an additional 1%, that would be 3.2. But it's been suggested so far 2.2. It hadn't been decided yet. And that was by the House Democratic Caucus. If you check our town for the last 3 years, it's given 3%, excuse me. In 18, we gave 2% overall and 3% to a few individual employees who had not received pay raises before. In 19, we gave 3%. In 20, I believe we gave 3%. The Fed in 2018 gave 1.9%. In 2020 gave 3.1%. In 2021 gave 1.0%. In 2022, as I said, the Dems have proposed 2.2%. Local towns, Delmar gave 3%. Mr. Zolper, do you have an idea about other towns? Mr. Zolper?
Yes, sir.
Do you have idea about other towns, what they're paying? Delmar gave 3%. You told me the other night what.
Delmar is 3%. Newport is 3%. When you look at Lewis, they drafted a 1.3%, but then again, they have a.
I understand. We all understand that they have a different type pay scale. But do you have any other towns that would?
I don't, but I think for us to compare the town to the federal government where they do have pay scale increases, as I talked about before, may not be the best way to compare the employees at Dewey Beach with the federal government.
And if you talk about the cost of living in the last year has not gone up sky high. We've kept our employees over the last few years as higher than average increases than most. And it's my opinion that 4% is too much, and that somewhere between 2 and 3% would be fine. Mr. Stevens and then Mr. Persinger.
Dale, may I comment?
My comment, Mr. Mayor, is that, I've with some of my clients, some of the people that I work with, they have developed a formalized compensation plan. It's looking at what you're talking about, looking at what's happening next door, looking at the neighboring towns, and having a structure that we do this. I'd ask that we may try to adopt a more formalized compensation plan structure in this upcoming year, so it's not necessarily being pegged to the cost of what's happening in San Francisco or in DC. Most of the companies that I work with, they are at a minimum at 3%. And
minimum
I
what?
agree at 3% raise. But without other information like you are, I don't know how I get to 4. So
Okay.
I'll throw it back out there.
Mr. Persinger?
You ask if I can make a comment?
Sure.
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
Dave
Have a
Davis?
comment, then I'll
I'm
chime in.
sorry, I didn't know you wanted to make another comment. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, setting it at a certain percentage is not an arbitrary thing. What we don't know is how much how Dewey compares in pay scale to other surrounding towns. Saying we should be similar to other surrounding towns is fine if we're already paying our folks, equivalent amount. I don't know that that's the case. I've heard several people say in the last year or two that many of our folks are underpaid compared to surrounding towns. So I would suggest we err on the side of caution, trying to keep our good people. And since we have room in the budget to cover it, keep the increase on the high side.
Mr. Persinger?
I think, Mr. Mayor, you're correct. Last year we gave 3%. And if you look at the cost of living over the past year, it's 1.7%. I think that's through February. I looked at the projections for inflation. I didn't see anything higher than 2.2% generally as a consensus figure. There are other people who say that inflation is really not even going to hit that. So from my perspective, I think 3% is the better number. It's the more supportable number. If other commissioners really believe that 4% is the right way to go, I'm not going to quibble over that. What I think is really important is what Commissioner Stevens suggested, is that we have a better system for administering pay within and compensation within our town employees. I think we need a way of, rather than having them depend just on an overall percentage increase, what you do is you muddle exemplary performance with very average performance, and everybody gets the same percentage. That makes no sense to me. We need a better way of people being able to understand how they can move up the pay scale and how they might be rewarded for truly exemplary performance. So I think that's kind of key for the future. But again, for this year, I think 3% is the better number from my perspective. In terms of the transfer tax, we talked about a little bit. I don't know how you get to a right number. It's very difficult to do that. There certainly will be some turnover. There's going to be, I took a look at the real estate section today, at least what's available on Redfin, and there clearly are still some properties out there that are for sale.
Actually,
there will be more that come up for sale. There's still an opportunity for profit taking. Interest rates haven't increased that much. There still seem to be some willing buyers out there. Properties seem to be going relatively quickly. So, the Budget and Finance Committee took this down $15,000 already. That was not an unreasonable thing to do. So I would be very happy with leaving it at 735. The thing I'm most disappointed with about the budget is the fact that we have not been able to set aside that hotel tax fund in some way or another. And I'm still hoping that in some way we could preserve a portion of that so that we could begin the seeds of a real capital expenditure fund, which we don't have. A lot of this discussion feeds into what comes out of the general fund balance policy that we've had 3 committees working on. And we're going to do some more work on, obviously, as we get to the final policy. But if there's some way of setting aside some of that hotel tax money and putting it toward a capital expenditure fund, I would feel a lot better about the budget.
All right, I'm gonna make a statement and then go to Mr. Stevens and Mr. Jasinski. I would suggest that we've got 3 things going here right now that we've started talking about. Pay raises, the hotel lodging tax, and the transfer tax. I would suggest maybe we stick with the pay raises right now and then discuss the lodging tax and the transfer tax after that, if that's all right with everybody.
Yep.
Mr. Bauer.
Yeah, no, I was going to weigh in on that. The Budget and Finance has recommended a 4% raise for everybody, and if I look at last year being a, quote unquote difficult year, and it looks like expenses were kept low. So I got to commend people for doing a great job on that. The fact that revenue grew, we somewhat have some control of that as a staff, but not necessarily. Transfer tax, drove that number very well. And, but I think the staff deserves a 4%. That difference of 3 to 4%, I don't think really impacts our budget very much. So I'd be in favor of the 4.
Mr. Stevens and then Mr. Jasinski.
Yeah, I can support a 4% given the comments that Commissioner Persinger and Commissioner Bauer put forth. I just ask that we as a committee dedicate some time to not just deciding upon a percentage, but we do a market analysis in this upcoming year so that when we do come to the 2023 budget, it's based upon real data. It's based upon the individual position data and with some element of performance, but I can support the 4% also.
Mr. Jazinski.
So the town for the past couple of years has had raises that have slightly exceeded the rate of inflation. And at 3%, it would still exceed the rate of inflation for this past year. I think it's important that we understand which employees potentially are being underpaid relative to their counterparts in other municipalities locally. And I think it's important that in terms of attracting and retaining the right people, that we have the ability in our budget to pay those people if they're underpaid properly. So with that in mind, I think that 3% is the better number. And the real issue is we need to direct that our town manager benchmark the key staff salaries against other localities to really identify where we've got some more significant pay problems. And then when we look at next year's raises, that we try to allocate more money to those positions where there's a comparable pay issue.
Mr. Persinger?
I didn't have my hand up, but I'll be glad to talk.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I saw your hand up.
No, I did not. I do have some other comments, but I'll let others. I don't know if there were other comments on this particular issue on the pay raise.
This particular issue, the pay raise.
Right.
You say you
I
do
agree
not
with everything that David said, but I'd rather err on the 4%, 1% up than
I'm
1%
sorry.
down.
Wait 1 second. Mr. Persinger, did you say you did or did not have a comment on the pay raise?
Well, it's not a specific comment on pay rate. Again, I think 3% is the better number, but I think it's important not only to benchmark against other municipalities, certain positions, but to create some sort of a scale so that there's it creates, it provides for employees some expectation of how they might be able to move up the ladder. So I think we're talking about a salary scale, and then the commissioners can come back and chew over the cost of living increase that they want to add to the budget. But, you know, it takes out of our hands any notion of, you know, are we fully rewarding the employees as we should? That's really up to the town manager. And if he's got a salary scale he can work from, then he can appropriately award the employees based on their performance over the previous year.
Well, before we go to any kind of sovereign solution, I have a final statement that I think if you look at it logically, and I'm not saying you all aren't, I'm just saying that if you look at it, we have been above cost of living, the average cost of living in the past few years. 3% now would still be above that cost of living. Matter of fact, if Mr. Persinger's figure was correct, I believe he said cost of living went up 1 point, what, Mr. Persinger?
1.7 over the past.
1.7, we'd be quite a bit above the cost of living. I'm in favor of a 3%. I was initially in favor of 2%. I was convinced after looking at all the other towns, what they're paying and what the federal government is offering I'm convinced to go to 3%, and that's where I'll stand for it. Mr. Zolper?
So I would just say I agree, and I hope within the next 6 months or so that I can work on a pay scale comparable to some of the other towns. But I'd just like to throw out, so for the police department, and I'm talking about a corporal that you voted on in 2019 when Scott came before you on January 29th.
I'm sorry.
A corporal would make $52,000 based on what you gave him then.
Mr. Zolper, face the microphone as you speak, if you would, please.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry. A corporal here makes $52,000 a year. That's based on the July of 2019 pay increase you gave him. A corporal with Georgetown makes $67,000. A corporal with Bethany Beach makes $62,000. A corporal with Ocean View makes $61,000, which in average is about $56,000. So, and I don't have stats for like the clerk of the court. I don't have stats for finance and our maintenance folks, and I should have those, but I do have the police stats that Scott worked on right here. So we are below when we talk about our police officers, and we talk about 3% versus 4%.
Okay, Mr. Persinger.
I mean, those kind of comparative salaries are not, from my perspective, aren't really helpful right now. I mean, those other towns have very different situations than we do. We're the only town that has no property tax. If you want to make everything fully consistent with other municipalities, you're going to have to find the revenue sources that match those towns as well. And we don't have that right now. So, I mean, I think we're trying to be fair to the town employees. I like your idea of creating a pay scale. It could be a pay scale that's consistent just for Dewey Beach. It doesn't have to match anybody else's pay scale, but it does create a path for employees that they can look forward to. And to say, if my performance is really exemplary, I can go up a step or I can go up 2 steps. And then at the same time, again, we can come back at each year at budget time and we can talk about an overall general inflation increase.
Mr. Persinger, before you continue, did you want to make a motion?
On the entire budget?
On the pay raise?
Is that the way we do this? I mean, is that a formal motion that we should have? I'm not sure.
Well, in order to change the suggested budget, you have to have a motion to change the line item figure.
Okay, I guess we've lost our town attorney, is that right?
I think you have to do it in the motion when you approve the budget, approve it with the amendments too, and then whatever your amendments would be.
Okay, so we should talk about the other issues before we settle this.
Agreed.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay.
So you want to?
So we transfer tax, payroll. What was the third budget, Mr. Mayor?
Lodging tax.
Okay. Well,
go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
Mr. Persinger, I know that you have there's an interest to have where the lodging tax be dedicated in terms of to a specific purpose. I'd ask that we defer that until next year, until we go through the audit, budget, and investment fund balance review and develop that policy and have a clear understanding of what those funds and as Mr. Zolper had mentioned, he was going to look at a long-range capital improvement, capital project, capital improvement, capital purchase. And maybe we can defer that until next year. If we can just put it in the general fund this year, I think it will help the budgetary process and knowledge base.
Is there any other comments on the lodging tax, Mr. Persinger?
Well, I would just note that the projected budget increase here, or rather the projected budget surplus that's proposed for FY22 is $67,000. So there are some funds there that if we wanted to include as part of our motion to approve the budget, creating maybe an assigned account for a capital improvement fund, using that estimated surplus, we could do that, I believe.
I'm going to make a comment on, it's my thought that when we went to this lodging tax, that it wasn't agreed to, but the general discussion was that we would aim it towards capital budget, and I kept insisting about infrastructure, because of the expenses we're going to have on flooding in town and the drainage problem. All of a sudden, when we get the lodging tax through, everybody wants to start spending money, and it becomes like the old tax and spend routine, and I'm not for that at all, So I think we ought to try to keep our budget in line. There's no doubt about that, but I don't think we should be. We've spent almost the budget committee at the last meeting, before they finished, spent almost the entire amount of the lodging tax, added it to the budget. And I said, I didn't understand what was going on. I'm sorry, Mr. Jasinski, you had your hand up.
Well, I was just, when you're done, I wanted to make a comment, that was all.
Mr. Jasinski, then Mr. Stevens. Go ahead, Mr. Jasinski.
We're kind of going around and, we're all just talking about small changes. So I'm just actually going to make a motion based on everybody talking about this, that we approve this budget with a 3% raise for the town employees, and that $60,000 of the bottom line that's net income be put into a capital improvement fund.
Is there a second for the motion?
I'll second it.
There's been properly moved motion from Mr. Jazinski and a second from Mr. Persinger. And let's have the maker of the motion speak first and then Mr. Stevens.
Okay, so bottom line is that does leave a little bit left in net income in the budget. It's, it's still a balanced budget with a little bit more income than expenses. And it starts to send us in the direction of establishing a capital improvement fund. And frankly, in this budget year, we'll understand what the hotel tax is really going to bring in. That's a little bit of a nebulous figure right now. And potentially the capital improvement fund the contribution could be increased in future years.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes, so I can support the 3% in this year until we get the comp plan done. If we're going from 4 to 3%, that 60,000 will go up to what? I guess it will go up to 90,000. Is it about a $30,000 per point? Is that correct? Mr. Zolper, do you know? Or Ms. Gossett?
So the difference, I guess, between the 4 and 3% is about $12,000, correct, Sheena?
Correct. Just pennies over 12,000.
Okay, Mr. Stevens, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess David, the one thing I can support what you're saying is that from a motion 3%, I'd ask instead of a dollar figure, we do a percentage of the hotel tax that comes in. For example, if 50% of the hotel tax in this coming year was allotted to capital improvements.
That's not a bad idea. What do you think 50% is the right number?
Until we get a good handle on the full long-term capital budget that we need and the understanding and what the hotel tax really will mean to us in the year in terms of from an occupancy, it just ties it to something easy to calculate versus.
Okay. Yeah. I'm okay with that. I'll take that. I need the person who seconded my motion to agree to 50% of the hotel tax being our capital improvement fund.
Mr. Persinger, you was the second on yeah, and you had your hand up also. Do you want to go ahead and comment on that?
Yes, I think that's a good suggestion. I'm comfortable with that. I think that makes a lot of sense. Even a small seed is better than no seed at all. One other point though, could we suspend our conversation just for a moment to hear from Merle, because I think there's a potential impact of increased expenditures if we approve this T2 system, but there's a higher cost for next year than is already built into our budget.
Well, part of that would be capital improvement, correct, on the 23,000?
Well, there's a motion and a second on the floor. You either have to withdraw the motion and gentlemanly agree but there's a motion and second on the floor, so we can't go to something else. We have to finish this motion.
Yeah, I mean, the large expense is in the current year's budget that we're in today. And the real issue was whether the incremental cost, sorry, I'm getting one of those stupid alert things. The real issue was whether the incremental cost was like $3,000 or $9,000 a year. So it's not dramatic that it's going to send us, I think, into the red. So I think we can talk to Merle afterwards. I don't know that we have to settle that before we approve the budget.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
Okay, there's a motion and second on the floor. Any further discussion? Ashley, would you want to read the motion out so we know what we're voting on?
I have motion by Commissioner Jazinski to approve the budget with a 3% raise for town employees, 60,000 of the bottom line income to be put into the capital improvement fund, and 50% of the hotel tax going to the capital improvement fund, seconded by Commissioner Persinger.
That's not quite right.
No,
the motion is just 50% of the hotel tax. The $60,000 part you can take out.
Okay, got it.
All right, does everybody understand the motion? All right, commissioners, any further discussion on the motion? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any against, say nay. Any abstention? Ashley, that was unanimous. All right, the budget is passed. And now, I guess Mr. Zolper. Mr. Zolper?
Yes.
Did you and Merle want to come in on the line item that you were still discussing?
Merle, are you ready? I'm sorry, I haven't had a chance to talk to you. Are you prepared to answer questions?
All right, Merle, your phone, your speaker is off. I mean, your microphone is off. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Merle, I said that I believe the town town manager referred to you.
Yeah, so the subscriptions, the cost that you have now for the $14,000, that was included with the mobile enforcement. It's all included in this $18,000 annually. So instead of the 14, it'll be $18,000 annually.
Okay,
So you're saying the incremental cost is $4,000, not $9,000.
Correct.
So year 2 and forward, we have $4,000 additional dollars we have to spend over what we were spending up until yesterday.
we just lost Merle. There we go.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Jasinski, go ahead and repeat that to
Yeah, so
Merle again.
the question, I just want to be real clear. So the incremental cost, versus what we did, not including the upfront money, versus what we have today versus what we'll have with the new enhanced T2 system, is $4,000 additional dollars per year.
Correct.
Okay.
And Mr. Persinger.
So it's $4,000 additional a year. Could we just go back through what the upfront costs will be right now? How much will we be pulling out of the budget surplus? Is that $32,000 or is that a different figure?
The total cost for everything is $32,738.40. They do milestone pricing, which is 50% upfront, which I think comes to $11,600. And then after that, it's 40%. That's when we go live, which means everything is ready to go. People can get online and get their permits. And the 10% is due when the project is done. It's closed, everybody is good, training's over, and we don't need T2 anymore.
Okay, I'm still a little bit confused. I'm just trying to get, we have surplus money from this year's budget, which we would like to spend. We'd like to support the T2 system. So I'm just trying to get a sense. You're talking about payment over time. Isn't there, you need an invoice. Right. You need an invoice set for $32,000 that we can approve.
Yes, I have.
Okay, so we could make a motion that says we would like to approve the upgrading of the T2 system at a cost of $32,738.40 to be taken.
Are you making that motion, Mr. Person?
To be taken from the current year's budget surplus, and yes, I am making that motion.
All right.
Okay, I'll second that.
You second that, Mr. Jasinski?
Yes.
Motion's been made and second. Mr. Stevens, you had your hand up.
I apologize, everyone. I'm still not clear, and I don't think the system, from everything that we heard, is $32,000. The system will cost us $23,200 for implementation, while Merle was saying half of it would be just under $12,000 for the 50%, and then 40% 10. So my understanding of the system right now is it's going to cost us $23,220 to put a new upgraded system in place. And then it's going to also cost us $18,000 a year. Am I wrong in what I'm saying?
Merle, do you want to answer?
So there's a one-time cost, which is $23,000.
Right.
And then the subscription for this year would be $9,518.40.
Which is part of that 18,000.
No, this would be, yes, for the following years, yes.
So guys, I might be able to clear this up a little. I used to kind of sell software for a living. So do they have one-time charge elements as well as annual elements in the software license fee? Is that where the confusion's coming? Merle?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So some companies do it that way, guys. Some companies are purely cloud and you just pay the annual fee, but others charge you a one-time fee and then they charge you an annual fee on top of it.
Mr. Stevens.
Gary, can you make the motion so up to 32,000? So if we're
Up to
all right, we
30
all
up to-
fall into the same bucket.
Up to 33,000.
Yes.
We can accommodate the $738. Yes. Yes, that would be fine with me.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
So Ashley, do you have the motion now? We could read that.
I think I have this one. I might need a correction on this one. But I have motion by Commissioner Persinger to approve the upgrade of the T2 systems to be taken from the current year surplus up to $33,000.
That's correct. And I believe it was seconded by Mr. Jazinski, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Mr. Stevens says he's being gagged. All in favor, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any against, say nay. Any abstentions? Unanimous, Ashley.
Thank you, Merle.
Thank
All
you,
right.
guys.
Thank you, Merle.
Thank you, Merle.
Thank
It
you.
took so long, but you did a good job presenting it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we're down to, I believe, item number 11, town manager's comments, although town manager is speaking to somebody else right now, I
No, I was just talking to myself.
think.
No, seriously, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a number of different things. I'll go over them rather quickly. So again, reviewing with the department heads, what's been going on, what hasn't been going on. When I talked to the chief, I noticed there hadn't been promotions in the department on some of their employees in a number of years. We have a PFC Matthew Wilson. Last time he was promoted was 2009. He's eligible for corporal now. Sergeant Cliff Dempsey, last time promoted 2009. He's eligible for staff sergeant. Patrolman Gavin Vaughn was due for a promotion on 2/18 of 2020 to patrolman first class. And Corporal Jenny was promoted last in 2010. He's eligible for staff corporal. So when I say this, I believe that with the chief's recommendation, and I concur with it, I have the ability to tell him to go forward with those promotions. But there is money involved in some of those. And I want to make sure that I let you know that those 4 individuals are getting promoted. And just like we talked about the pay scale, we need to incorporate in the police department the same thing, a time and grade pay scale. So when they meet the certain criteria, they've shown the leadership and they go up to a rank of corporal, that there's a reason why we could justify that. And if I could just step back a minute, when I've looked at Bethany Beach and Rehoboth, because there's always a question, well, if they promote up, who's at the bottom? Rehoboth right now has 4 sergeants, 2 master corporals, 2 senior corporals, a detective, 2 regular corporals, 2 PFCs, and 1 patrolman. Just 1 patrolman, that's it. So, I mean, and they're keeping their people. And Bethany Beach has 4 sergeants down there. So what I'm saying is I understand the concern about everybody being in a leadership role, but if we want to keep these people on our department, we have to promote them. Now, that being said, I need to work with the chief to make sure that we have certain requirements they meet to get those promotions. But being that this is my 45th day, I haven't had an opportunity to sit down with him and get those. And since there's money involved in some of those, maybe that has to come back to the commissioners. But I endorse these 4 people, these 4 police officers being promoted to those ranks based on the chief's recommendation. And with that, pending any questions, I also have the chief here for any questions.
I'm sorry, you also had what?
The chief here for any questions. The chief here for any questions.
Yes.
No questions.
No questions? Anybody? Thank you, town manager. Is that all you have?
No, there's another item, and I just want to make sure everybody understands that what perception is and what appearance is. This is off the 2021 budget. There was $12,000 set aside for Christmas. I guess you would call them, or I shouldn't say Christmas, holiday
bonuses.
Holiday bonuses. And there were also bonuses that should have been given after the audit. That was not done because of COVID at that time. But with the 21 full-time employees that we currently have, or now 22, that basically breaks it down to about $160 per employee to bring us to zero on that $12,000. So I think it's a good thing we do for our employees. The money is sitting there. It wasn't done because of the COVID. And I would just say to the commissioners, that's something that I'd like to move forward on.
Commissioners, do you have any comment? I'll have a comment saying it was put in the budget. It's there in the budget. It was not expended. I think it's the proper thing to do. And he's not looking for a vote. He's just looking to let you all know what he's doing so you won't think it's hidden by any means.
Thank you, Town Manager.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
So, Mr. Mayor, I have a couple more things I'll run through real quick, just to let you know, the police chief and I, and Lieutenant Hocker and Dempsey met with some of the business owners, mainly the restaurant establishments that will be open during the St. Patrick's Day period. We talked to them about the governor's guidance to 50% and what should happen if there's an issue and how the chief and I would handle that. It was received very well. It was done down at the Hyatt. We did it outside on the deck, so everybody kept their distances. But, you know, as the town manager, as the police chief, we are going to be very proactive on discussions like that. We'll do another one before Memorial Day. Are there any questions on that?
I see none right now.
I'm looking at an estimate to paint the inside of the lifeguard station over there, where once we go back full time and live over there, right now that place is a mess. I don't know the last time that was painted on the inside, but I'm getting estimates on that right now. And if it's over $2,000, unless it's already been voted in the budget, I have to come back before you, but I wanted to let you know I'm doing that. I'm also getting estimates to power wash the outside of this building and then paint the trim, the white trim on the building. We're also looking at putting a smart TV upstairs in the conference room. So where the mayor's sitting right now, there'll be a large 50-inch TV up there that we'll be able to do Zoom calls on. And we're also interviewing for a possible financial person to work with Sheena. We've interviewed 2 people so far. We have 2 more. Pending any questions, that's all I have from the town manager.
Remember, commissioners, that we did authorize, and we haven't taken that authorization back, and I hope we don't. We did authorize a financial director. And I would ask that the town manager keep in touch with Mr. Stevens and Mr. Persinger and Mr. Jasinski in particular. Mr. Bauer is tied up with other things, and so am I. But you 3 seem to be the people that are liaisons and working with the financial end of the town. And I would hope that the commissioner would, the town manager would keep in touch with you 3 before we do the hiring.
Sounds great.
Great, that's fine.
Good. Is that it, Mr. Zolper?
That's it, unless we want to talk 5G, and I don't want to talk 5G.
You just brought it up.
We don't have that much time.
You're right.
You got 2 minutes.
I can say this, Bethany Beach and Fenwick both have poles along the ocean. The mayor and I saw them today. But yeah.
So the comment that we were the only town in the world that had 5G telephone poles along the ocean is not true. But anyway. Okay, we'll go on to number 12, commissioner comments. Commissioner Bauer.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add here, outside of, Bill's doing a great job as a town manager. It's very encouraging how the year turned out for us, considering the situations we all went through last year. But yeah, so I'd like to, commend all the people at Town Hall that kept the expenses down, and, that was just an outstanding job. One thing we probably haven't talked about, but the accommodations tax, I believe, is due April 15th, tax day. So, I don't know if we need to make an announcement out to everybody, but that's coming right around the corner for us. So, but that's all I have today.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer. Commissioner Jasinski.
No comments from me.
Commissioner Persinger.
Yeah, I have 2 quick things. Based on our February 26th workshop, I've been working through a new draft of the Bay Beach and Bay Walk rules. I plan to have that by sometime next week. And what I want to do is to send that out to all the commissioners for some comments. Those comments could be sent back to me and to the town manager. I can put together another draft. And I want to keep this on as quick a time frame as possible so that we have an opportunity to get the commissioners' comments, get out a new draft, posted publicly, and let the public have time to react to it as well, so that we can potentially finally approve this during our April meeting. So that's one thing. The second thing is, I think we were all involved in the workshop that we had with the three committees to talk about the general fund balance policy. We do have an opportunity to have a Zoom meeting with the auditor, Dan Kennedy from the auditors, but what we need to do ahead of time is to send them any questions. So I'm asking that we send our questions back to the town manager by next Wednesday. And then hopefully we can schedule a meeting with Dan Kennedy from the auditors the following week, probably the end of the following week. If it's going to involve all the commissioners, we'll have to have public notice of that. It'll have to be a public meeting. So, I mean, that'll be a factor depending on what kinds of comments we get back and how many commissioners actually feel they want to be involved in the conversation with the auditors. So that's it. Thank you.
Just clarity, Gary, 317 or 323?
Or
For the
comment, for the
by
question.
next Wednesday on 317?
317, yeah, so that we could hopefully have conversation with the auditor by the 24th or 25th or 26th, perhaps.
And Gary, did you say the reply should go to the town manager?
The question should go to the town manager. That's right, yes.
Yeah, I just want to be careful, folks, to remind you about when you get things, don't reply to all because people will throw this into FOIA issues. Mr. Stevens.
Yes, I'll be real quick as it's 5:02. I'd like to also say to thank the marketing committee, not just because my wife's on it and I feel like I have to, but because they're coming up with new ideas, new ways of changing the future of Dewey in a positive way to celebrate who we are and what we do. Also like to say thank you to Dave Davies on the Budget and Finance Committee. I think we have some interesting projects that I want us to really put our hands around in terms of the capital improvement, capital budget, and planning and zoning, like what's going to happen in the future, not just year after year. Now it looks like we'll also be looking at the compensation side of it, and it's really a great thing moving forward. I had two other things on my list. This is towards Fred. You made a comment earlier in regards to the person defined and how that was not applicable from a voting perspective. I will just throw out that, we're going to be upon a new election relatively soon. There's a lot of time and energy wasted on, defining who can run versus who can vote. I've always taken the position that I felt that when our charter was created, it was a simple oversight of what did not exist at the time that the charter was created, in the sense that the IRS this town only recognizes individuals and trusts, that we did not want to recognize corporations. There are homeowners here that have put their houses in an LLC, which technically is, unless it's multi-member, is not a corporation, is a disregarded entity, not an individual. And for us to at least consider looking at a possible change to allow those those residents who do have their properties in LLC to have the ability to vote just as I do. So just something that I want to throw out there before it gets away from us and we're upon another season of voting. The last thing, and this ties into something you said, Mr. Mayor, is this town is evolving, is to have a greater understanding of how we are moving and approaching to full-time residents or part-year residents versus vacation. I feel very proud to be one of the X number that are full-time residents of Dewey Beach. And I didn't know if there's anything we can do within our communication strategy, whether that be the letters that are going out to determine, who's a full-time, who's a part-time, who rents, and I don't know what the structure is and what their intentions are going forward, just so we can properly plan and give as we know if we know what the future is going to be in terms of renters versus residents, then at least we might be able to do a little bit more of a predictive model of where the town is going to be taxed in terms of its services and fees and structure. So that's my last comment. It's happy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all very much. And I also would like to thank all the committees, in particular marketing and budget and finance. They've been through a lot lately and they're doing a great job for us, and the liaisons to them are doing a great job with those committees. And I personally appreciate it. What I don't want to get into deeply right now, but this thing with the 5G poles is worrying a lot of people in town, and rightfully so. We as a group just passed the regulations about placement of 5G poles and the equipment. And it's slowly but surely coming to a head. I mean, lots of people are now saying, well, what next? You passed this ordinance, now what next? Well, I asked the town attorney, I said, can I put a stop to, as mayor, can I say as mayor to instruct the town to stop giving out, excuse me, permission for placement when people ask to build a telephone pole or put in a telephone pole and place a pole. And he said, well, you can if you want to get yourself sued personally. And I said, well, I don't want to do that, but so it's out of my jurisdiction to tell people that they cannot issue permits to place poles in. We passed a regulation. If people meet the qualifications of those regulations, if a company comes in and wants to put a pole in and meets the qualifications of those regulations, we have to issue a permit. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. We're trying now to get a meeting with all the parties involved, meaning Del Dot and myself and the town manager and the town assistant manager who have been involved in it quite often. But we haven't succeeded at that yet, but we're on our way. So I'm not sure, I'm not giving you a lot of answers. There are not a lot of positive answers, but we have to follow the regulations. We have to follow our own laws and regulations. So it's coming down the road. There'll be more between. If y'all want to know more, you can call me or call Mr. Townsend or call Jim Dedes or Mr. Zolber. We've been highly involved in it, and it's going to be a problem. So other than that, thank you all very much. I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.